She thinks it's just a small act of kindness. But this one moment changes everything. It feels like the fresh start she's been praying for. Until one innocent comment sparks a rumor so vicious it threatens her job, her dignity, even the program meant to help children. Now, she must fight back, not just for herself, but for the future of every child who needs her. But in a town where gossip travels faster than truth, can Grace be loud enough to save them? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Elena Grace Porter glanced at her watch as she entered the nearly empty town mall, her worn blue cardigan wrapped tight against the building's overzealous air conditioning. 20 minutes, that's all she had before she needed to get back to folding other people's laundry. The discount store usually had good deals on Tuesday mornings, and Micah desperately needed new socks. His growing feet and active nature meant she was constantly finding holes in the toes. The mall was eerily quiet at this hour. Her footsteps echoed off the cream-colored tiles, past the shuttered storefronts that seemed to multiply every month. A lonely coffee kiosk and a few scattered benches were all that remained in this wing. The discount store was just around the corner, past the defunct fountain. That's when she heard it, a high-pitched wail that cut through the silence like broken glass. Elena stopped, her heart clenching at the raw desperation in that cry. It wasn't the usual tantrum of an overtired toddler. This was different, the sound of real distress. She followed the echoes, her practical shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The crying grew louder, punctuated by quick, gasping breaths that Elena recognized all too well from her years working with anxious children. There, under a wooden bench near the empty fountain, she spotted a small figure curled into a tight ball. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, with honey-blonde hair falling over her face. Her whole body trembled as she struggled to breathe between sobs. Elena approached slowly, keeping her movements calm and deliberate. She knelt down a few feet away, making sure not to crowd the frightened child. "Hi there, sweetheart," she said softly. "My name's Elena. I can see you're having a really hard time right now." The girl's breathing grew more ragged, edging toward hyperventilation. Elena began to hum quietly, the familiar notes of Amazing Grace, floating gently in the air between them. She kept her voice steady and sweet, letting the melody wrap around them like a warm blanket. After a moment, the girl's sobs hitched slightly as she listened. "Would you like to try something that might help?" Elena asked, keeping her tone gentle. "It's called a pocket breath. Want to learn it with me?" A tiny nod was her only response. "Okay, sweetie. Let's pretend we're filling up our pockets with air, nice and slow," Elena demonstrated, drawing in a deep breath. "Count with me, 1, 2, 3, 4. The girl tried to follow along, her breath still shaky. "Now let's empty our pockets even slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Elena exhaled smoothly. "You're doing great. Let's try again." They repeated the exercise several times. Gradually, the girl's breathing steadied. Her small shoulders began to relax, though she remained curled beneath the bench. "That's it," Elena encouraged. "You're so brave. Would you like to tell me your name?" "Sadie," came the whispered reply. "It's nice to meet you, Sadie. Would you like to come sit with me on the bench? We can keep doing our pocket breaths together." Slowly, Sadie uncurled herself and crawled out. Her face was tear-stained, her blue eyes still wide with anxiety. She gripped Elena's offered hand like a lifeline as they settled on the bench together. "Sadie!" A man's voice echoed down the corridor, footsteps rapidly approaching. "Sadie, where are you?" The girl tensed, but didn't let go of Elena's hand. A tall man in a crisp business suit rounded the corner, his face etched with worry. When he spotted them, relief flooded his features. "Oh, thank God," he breathed. "Daddy," Sadie whispered, but she didn't move from Elena's side. Instead, her other hand reached out to grip Elena's cardigan. The man, clearly Sadie's father, approached more slowly, taking in the scene. His daughter was calm, though her cheeks were still damp with tears. He looked at Elena with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. "I heard her crying," Elena explained quietly. "We've been doing some breathing exercises together." "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm Ethan Caldwell. I just stepped away for 2 minutes to take a phone call, and when I came back..." He trailed off, running a hand through his dark hair. "Elena Porter," she replied. "Sadie's been very brave, haven't you, sweetheart?" Sadie nodded, her grip on Elena's cardigan tightening. "Are you a teacher?" Ethan asked, noting how naturally she interacted with his daughter. "I used to be a music aide at the elementary school," Elena said. "Now I work at the laundromat down the street." Something flickered across Ethan's face, surprise perhaps, or recognition. He studied her more intently, taking in her gentle demeanor and the way Sadie remained anchored to her side. "The breathing exercise you taught her, I've never seen her calm down so quickly," he said. "Usually these episodes." He glanced at his daughter, choosing his words carefully. "They can last much longer." "Pocket breaths," Sadie murmured, demonstrating by taking another deep inhale and slow exhale. "That's exactly right," Elena smiled. "You're getting so good at them." Ethan watched this exchange, his expression thoughtful. "Miss Porter, Elena, I can't thank you enough. Most people would have just walked past or called security." Elena shook her head. No child should have to struggle alone. She glanced at her watch and suppressed a sigh. Her lunch break was nearly over. Sadie seemed to sense Elena's impending departure. Her fingers twisted more tightly in the soft blue fabric of the cardigan. "Don't go," she whispered. "I have to get back to work, sweetheart," Elena said gently. "But you can keep practicing your pocket breaths with your dad. Would you like to teach him how?" Sadie looked up at her father uncertainly. Ethan immediately knelt down to his daughter's level, his expression open and eager to learn. "Show me?" he asked, softly. The wailing had stopped, but Ethan Caldwell's heart was still racing. He stood beside the silent fountain, watching his daughter Sadie hold tight to Elena's cardigan, her small fingers wrinkled from dried tears. The morning's panic attack had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. "I can't thank you enough," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "The way you knew exactly what to do." He trailed off, studying the gentle woman who had appeared like an answer to an unspoken prayer. Elena smiled softly, her warm brown eyes kind. "I've had experience with children who struggle with anxiety. When I worked as a music aide at Riverside Elementary, we used similar techniques." "You were at Riverside?" Ethan's eyebrows lifted with interest. "What happened?" A shadow crossed Elena's face, and she absently smoothed her cardigan, where Sadie's grip had wrinkled it. "Budget cuts, officially. Though speaking up about certain practices didn't help my case." Ethan noticed how she chose her words carefully, the way her shoulders tensed slightly. There was more to that story, but he didn't press. Instead, he watched as Sadie peeked up at Elena from behind his leg, calmer now but still seeking comfort from this stranger who had shown such understanding. "Are you teaching somewhere else now?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "I work at Sunshine Laundromat. Speaking of which, I should probably..." "Wait." The word came out more forcefully than he'd intended, making both Elena and Sadie jump slightly. He softened his tone. "I'm sorry, but I have a proposition for you." Elena's expression turned guarded, but she didn't move away. The morning light filtering through the mall's skylight caught the silver threads in her dark hair, making them shimmer. "I fund a community arts center," Ethan explained, the idea taking shape as he spoke. "We've been wanting to start a children's program, something that combines music with..." "Well, with exactly what you just did with Sadie. Calming techniques, breathing exercises, a safe space for kids who need it." Elena's eyes widened slightly, but she remained silent, listening. "We need someone to coordinate it," he continued. "Someone who understands both the musical and emotional aspects. Someone with experience, compassion, and clearly remarkable instincts." He gestured to Sadie, who had relaxed enough to explore a few steps away, though she kept glancing back at Elena. "Mr. Caldwell." "Ethan, please." "Ethan," Elena amended. "That's That's a generous offer, but you don't even know me. I could be— I know what I just witnessed, he interrupted gently. I know my daughter hasn't calmed down that quickly from an attack in years. I know you have professional experience, even if it ended unfairly. And I know talent and genuine care when I see it. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, but Ethan could see the spark of interest in her eyes. What exactly would this position entail? Flexible hours, he said quickly, not wanting to lose her attention. Better pay than your current position. You'd help design the program, work with the kids, coordinate with volunteers. We have a budget for supplies, instruments, whatever you think would help. He watched as she bit her lower lip, clearly torn. The mall's ambient music played softly in the background, a generic tune that seemed to emphasize the importance of this moment. I'm honored, Elena said finally. And it sounds wonderful, but— She paused, choosing her words carefully again. My last experience in a similar setting. It didn't end well. Sometimes people's biases show up in subtle ways, until suddenly they're not subtle anymore. Ethan felt a surge of anger at whatever she'd experienced, but kept his voice steady. The Arts Center prides itself on being inclusive. We have strict policies about discrimination of any kind. And, as the primary funder, I have considerable influence in ensuring those policies are enforced. Elena glanced at her watch, and Ethan realized he was keeping her from her job. Look, he said quickly, pulling out a business card. Think about it. Call me if you want to discuss it further. We can meet somewhere more convenient, go over all the details. She accepted the card, turning it over in her hands. I will think about it, she said softly. Thank you. Sadie chose that moment to return to Elena's side, touching her cardigan one last time. The gesture seemed to affect Elena deeply, and Ethan saw her blink rapidly. I really do need to get back, Elena said, her voice slightly husky. But I'll consider it carefully. Ethan nodded, taking Sadie's hand. They watched as Elena walked away, her blue cardigan disappearing around the corner. Even after she was gone, Ethan could see her in his mind. The way she'd knelt beside his terrified daughter, humming that hymn, teaching those simple breaths that had worked like magic. He looked down at Sadie, who was still staring in the direction Elena had gone. His daughter's face was tear-stained but peaceful, and in that moment, Ethan knew he'd made the right choice in offering Elena the position. Now he just had to hope she'd accept it. The kitchen filled with the homey scent of meatloaf as Elena pulled the pan from the oven. Micah sat at their small kitchen table, his legs swinging as he watched her with curious eyes. His homework lay scattered across the table, math problems half finished. How was your day, Mom? He asked, pushing his glasses up his nose. Did anything exciting happen at the laundromat? Elena set the meatloaf on a cooling rack and smiled at her son. Actually, something special did happen today, but not at work. I met a little girl at the mall during my lunch break. Was she nice? Micah leaned forward, always eager for stories. She was scared, Elena explained, cutting thick slices of meatloaf onto their worn blue plates. Sometimes people get so scared that it's hard for them to breathe properly. She needed someone to help her feel safe. Micah's eyes widened with understanding. Like when I got nervous at the school concert? Just like that, honey. Elena set his plate in front of him, adding a scoop of green beans. Remember how we practiced our special breathing? In for 4, out for 6, Micah demonstrated, puffing his cheeks out dramatically. That's exactly what I taught her. Elena sat down across from him, watching as he carefully cut his meatloaf into precise squares. And you know what else helped her? Music. Did you sing to her? Micah asked between bites. I did. Sometimes a gentle song can help chase the scared feelings away. After dinner and dishes, Elena bundled Micah into his jacket. The autumn evening was crisp as they walked the 3 blocks to Mrs. Hayes's house. Retta's porch light glowed warmly, and the scent of fresh-baked cookies wafted through her screen door. Well, if it isn't my favorite Porter's, Retta called out, opening the door wide. Her silver hair caught the light like a halo, and her familiar floral apron was dusted with flour. Come in, come in. I just pulled snickerdoodles from the oven. Micah rushed forward for his customary hug, while Elena followed more slowly, her mind heavy with decisions. They settled in Retta's cozy living room, where choir music sheets were stacked neatly on the coffee table. "Now then," Retta said, passing Micah a warm cookie and a glass of milk. "What brings you by on a Tuesday evening?" Elena watched her son settle into the corner with one of Retta's picture books before speaking. "Something happened today, Retta. Something unexpected." She told the story, finding Sadie, calming her with song and breathing exercises, and finally, Ethan's surprising job offer. Retta listened intently, her weathered hands folded in her lap. "The Community Arts Center needs someone to coordinate their children's program," Elena finished. "It's more money than the laundromat, and the hours would work better with Micah's school schedule, but you're scared," Retta finished gently, "after what happened at Riverside." Elena nodded, throat tight. "What if it happens again? What if I speak up about something wrong and lose another job? Micah and I can't afford that." Retta leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "Elena Grace Porter, when the Lord opens a door, you need to stop checking the hinges." "What if it's not really open?" Elena whispered. "Child, you were led to that exact spot at that exact moment to help that little girl. That's not coincidence. That's providence." Retta reached over and squeezed Elena's hand. "Sometimes our biggest blessings require our biggest leaps of faith." Later that night, after thanking Retta and walking home under stars just beginning to peek through purple clouds, Elena knelt beside her bed. The worn carpet was soft under her knees, and the familiar quiet of their small apartment wrapped around her like a blanket. "Lord," she whispered, "I need your wisdom. Show me the path you want me to take. Help me be brave enough to follow it." In Micah's room, the nightlight cast soft shadows on the walls. He was already in his rocket ship pajamas, teeth brushed and ready for bed. Elena sat on the edge of his narrow bed, smoothing his dark curls back from his forehead. "Mom," he asked sleepily, "will you sing the song you sang to the scared girl?" Elena smiled and began to hum the gentle melody that had calmed Sadie earlier that day. Micah's eyes grew heavy and his breathing deepened. She continued humming, watching peace settle over his features like a gentle blanket. A small smile curved his lips as he drifted off to sleep, and Elena's heart swelled with love. Maybe Retta was right. Maybe this unexpected opportunity wasn't just about a better job. Maybe it was about using her gifts to help more children find their own peace. The morning sun streamed through the laundromat's windows, casting long shadows across the neatly folded stacks of towels. Elena organized the fresh linens while explaining her decision to Gina. "So you're really going to take that fancy new job?" Gina asked, loading quarters into the change machine. Her dark curls bounced as she shook her head in disbelief. "Girl, that's amazing, but we're going to miss you around here." "It's just part-time for now," Elena said, smoothing her navy blouse. She'd spent extra time getting ready this morning, wanting to look professional. "I'll still help out here when I can." Gina stopped what she was doing and gave Elena a warm hug. "Don't you dare worry about us. This is your chance. Take it." 20 minutes later, Elena stood before the impressive glass doors of the Community Arts Center. The modern building stretched 2 stories high, its walls adorned with colorful murals of dancing figures and musical notes. Her heart fluttered as she pulled open the heavy door. Ethan waited in the lobby, dressed in a crisp blue button-down and khakis. His usual business attire, Elena guessed, though he'd rolled up his sleeves as if ready to work. "Good morning," he said, his smile genuine. "Ready for the tour?" Elena nodded, following him down a sunlit hallway. The walls displayed children's artwork in simple frames, bringing warmth to the professional space. Their footsteps echoed on the polished floors. "This whole wing will be dedicated to the children's program," Ethan explained, gesturing to a series of connecting rooms. "We've got space for music, art, and quiet activities." They entered a large room with windows stretching from floor to ceiling. Soft mats covered one corner, while musical instruments lined the opposite wall. "This is our main activity space," Ethan said. "What do you think?" Elena walked slowly around the room, taking it all in. "It's perfect for movement activities." she said. "And those windows let in such beautiful natural light. That's so important for creating a calm environment." Ethan nodded approvingly. "I was hoping you'd notice that. The architects designed it specifically to feel welcoming, not institutional." They continued through the wing, meeting staff members along the way. Ms. Thompson, the front desk coordinator, gave Elena a warm welcome. Mr. WWW. Rodriguez, the maintenance supervisor, showed her where they kept the extra supplies. In a smaller room filled with art supplies, Ethan paused. "Elena, I want to be clear about something. This isn't just about running activities. We're creating a safe space for children dealing with anxiety, trauma, and other challenges." Elena's throat tightened as she thought of Sadie under the mall bench. "Like what you saw with your daughter?" "Exactly," Ethan's voice softened. "There are so many kids like Sadie who need help managing their emotions. But therapy is expensive, and not everyone has access to the right resources." They stopped at a conference room where Ethan spread out several folders. "Here's what I'm thinking," he said, opening one labeled Pilot Program. "We start small, maybe 15 to 20 kids. You'll have complete freedom to design the curriculum, music, movement, whatever you think will help." Elena leafed through the materials, her mind already spinning with possibilities. "What about staffing?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "I'm glad you brought that up. I had an idea about recruiting seniors as volunteers. They often have time, patience, and wisdom to share. Plus, it could create meaningful connections across generations." "That's brilliant," Elena said, thinking of Retta and her choir members. Many of them already have experience with children, either from teaching or raising their own families. They made their way to the final stop, the playroom. Sunshine poured through skylights, illuminating child-sized tables and chairs. Shelves held books, puzzles, and soft toys. A reading nook featured oversized pillows and a carpet patterned with musical notes. Elena stood in the center of the room, taking it all in. In her mind's eye, she could see Micah sitting at one of the little tables, showing Sadie how to tap out rhythms with colorful wooden sticks. She imagined their laughter mixing with gentle music, filling this space with joy. Looking around, she noticed thoughtful details everywhere: rounded corners on the furniture, soothing colors on the walls, and cozy spaces where an overwhelmed child could retreat. Every element seemed designed to say, "You're safe here." "Well?" Ethan asked, watching her reaction. "It's wonderful," Elena said softly. "You've created something really special here." She walked to one of the windows, her fingers trailing along a bookshelf. The morning light caught the dust motes dancing in the air, making them sparkle like tiny stars. This room held so much potential, not just for her son or for Sadie, but for every child who needed a gentle place to land. The playroom seemed to vibrate with possibility. Elena could almost hear the future sounds of children's voices, the gentle guidance of senior volunteers, and the healing power of music filling these walls. In this moment, surrounded by all this potential, her earlier hesitation began to fade. Elena's old Honda sputtered up the winding drive of Sycamore Lane, where stately homes stood like sentinels behind wrought iron gates. Micah pressed his face against the car window, eyes wide at the sight of Ethan Caldwell's 3-story colonial mansion. "Mommy, it's like a castle," he exclaimed, bouncing in his booster seat. "Remember what we talked about, sweetheart?" Elena adjusted her rearview mirror to catch his eye. "We're just here to pick up supplies for the music program. Best behavior, okay?" Micah nodded solemnly, his dark curls bobbing. "Yes, Mommy. I'll be extra careful with my inside voice." The security gate opened smoothly, and Elena parked beside a row of pristine hedges. Her weathered Honda looked out of place among the manicured grounds and marble fountains. She helped Micah out of his car seat, straightening his favorite dinosaur t-shirt. A housekeeper in a crisp uniform greeted them at the door. "Mr. Caldwell is on a business call but asked me to show you to his study. The donation boxes are ready there." Elena held Micah's hand as they followed the housekeeper through high-ceilinged hallways lined with artwork. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floors. Micah walked carefully, taking everything in with his usual quiet curiosity. "Please wait here," the housekeeper said, gesturing to the study. "I'll let Mr. Caldwell know you've arrived." While Elena examined the neat stacks of music books and instrument cases, Micah wandered into the connecting living room. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating family photos arranged on tables and walls. One particular silver frame caught Micah's attention. He stood before it, studying the image of a beautiful woman with honey-colored hair, cradling a tiny baby wrapped in pink. The woman's smile was gentle, her eyes kind, just like Sadie's. "That's Mrs. Caldwell and baby Sadie," the housekeeper explained, returning with a tea tray. "Such a lovely soul, gone far too soon." Elena moved to collect Micah, but he was already speaking, his voice carrying that characteristic innocence of 7-year-olds who haven't learned to filter their thoughts. "Mommy says you're my daddy," he announced brightly, turning toward Ethan, who had just entered the room. The teacup in the housekeeper's hands clattered against its saucer. Her eyes went wide, darting between Elena and Ethan. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "Micah, honey, that's not—" "I remember," Micah continued earnestly, "when you said good daddies help people and make music happy, just like Mr. Caldwell does." Elena's heart sank as she realized the connection Micah had made. Months ago, during one of his frequent bedtime questions about fathers, she had used examples of kind men they knew to explain what good fathers do. Now Micah had woven those abstract examples into a concrete, and very public, conclusion. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his usual composed expression replaced by genuine shock. The housekeeper had backed away, nearly stumbling over an ottoman. "I am so sorry," Elena managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Micah misunderstood something." "Mrs. Martinez," Ethan addressed the housekeeper, his tone carefully neutral. "Would you please help bring the donation boxes to Mrs. Porter's car?" The housekeeper nodded stiffly and hurried out, but Elena could already see the thoughts churning behind her eyes. By dinner, every staff member would know about this moment. Elena gathered Micah close, her hands trembling slightly. "Sweetheart, remember how we talked about Mr. Caldwell being Sadie's daddy? Just like Pastor Brooks is Tommy's daddy, and Mr. Chen is Lisa's daddy?" Micah's brow furrowed in confusion. "But you said—" "I know what I said about good fathers," Elena interrupted gently. "But I was giving examples of kind men, not saying they were your daddy. Mr. Caldwell is Sadie's father, not yours. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear before." Ethan cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should focus on loading those supplies." His voice was kind, but distant, professional once again. The warmth from their previous interactions had cooled considerably. They worked quickly and quietly, transferring boxes to Elena's car. Micah helped with the smaller items, still looking confused but sensing the tension in the air. As Elena closed her trunk, she caught movement near the garden shed. A groundskeeper quickly lowered his phone, but not before she saw the camera aimed in their direction. Her stomach twisted. She knew how this would look. A single mother from the working-class side of town, suddenly hired by a wealthy widower, her son claiming paternity. The groundskeeper's photo would feed the exact kind of gossip she'd spent years avoiding. "Thank you for the supplies," Elena said softly to Ethan, who stood at a careful distance. "I'm truly sorry about the misunderstanding." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "We'll talk more at the center tomorrow." As Elena helped Micah into his car seat, she could feel eyes watching from various windows of the mansion. The weight of those stairs, and the whispers that would follow, settled heavily on her shoulders. "Did I say something wrong?" Micah asked as they drove away, his voice small and worried. Elena reached back to squeeze his hand. "No, sweetheart. You just got a little mixed up, that's all. Sometimes grown-up things are confusing." In her rearview mirror, the mansion grew smaller, but Elena could still feel the ripples of Micah's innocent words spreading outward, threatening to wash away everything she'd worked so hard to build. The morning sun streamed through the laundromat's cloudy windows, catching dust motes that danced above the humming washers. Elena sorted a pile of towels, her mind still on yesterday's awkward moment at Ethan's house. The bell above the door chimed as Gina burst in, clutching her phone with an urgency that made Elena's stomach tighten. "Girl, you need to see this." Gina's usually playful voice carried a note of concern. She thrust her phone into Elena's hands, the screen displaying a local community Facebook group. Elena's heart sank as she stared at a grainy photo of herself and Micah leaving Ethan's house. The timestamp showed 4:47 p.m. yesterday. In the image, she was guiding Micah down the grand front steps, her hand on his shoulder. The caption beneath read, "New hire making herself at home?" The comments section was worse, much worse. "Single mom lands cushy job, visits boss's house 2 days later? Who posted this?" Elena's voice quavered as she scrolled through dozens of reactions and speculative comments. Gina leaned against a folding table. "Some anonymous account, but look how fast it's spreading." She pointed to the share count, which had already reached 300. "This is ridiculous," Elena muttered, handing the phone back with trembling fingers. "I was just picking up supplies for the program. Micah came along because my sitter canceled." "I know that, honey." Gina's dark eyes softened with sympathy. "But you know how this town works. People see what they want to see." The washing machines kept their steady rhythm as Elena sank into a plastic chair. A regular customer entered, gave her a long look, then chose a washer at the far end of the room. "I should call Ethan," Elena said, pulling out her phone. Her fingers hovered over his number. "He needs to know about this." "Do it now," Gina advised, starting to fold a customer's sheets, "before it gets worse." Elena stepped into the small break room, her heart pounding as she dialed. Ethan answered on the second ring. "Elena, is everything all right?" She took a deep breath. "There's something you should know. Someone took a photo of Micah and me leaving your house yesterday. It's on social media, and they're saying things." A heavy silence filled the line. Then Ethan spoke, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I'm so sorry, Elena. This is completely inappropriate. I'll have my assistant contact the group administrator to take it down." "The damage is already done," Elena said softly, watching through the break room window as another customer gave her a sideways glance. "People are suggesting that I'm trying to get close to you for your money. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid by keeping the program low-key at first." Ethan sighed. "Listen, maybe we should meet to discuss how to handle this. The community center, in an hour?" Elena agreed, then returned to the main room where Gina was watching her with concern. "I'm taking my break early," Elena told her, gathering her purse, "meeting Ethan at the center to figure this out." "That'll give them something else to talk about," Gina warned, but her tone was gentle. "Be careful, Elena. Not just with them, with your heart, too." The community center was quiet when Elena arrived, most morning classes not yet started. She found Ethan in the children's wing, pacing near the window. He turned when she entered, his face drawn with worry. "I've already spoken to the group moderator," he said without preamble. "The post will be removed, but the gossip's already out there," Elena finished. She sat in one of the child-sized chairs, feeling suddenly exhausted. "What do we do?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of frustration. "We keep the focus on our work. The program launches next week. Once people see what we're actually doing here helping children, bringing the community together, they'll forget about malicious rumors." "Will they?" Elena looked up at him. "This town has a long memory, especially for people they've already decided don't belong in certain places." "You belong here," Ethan said firmly. "This program needs you, Sadie." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sadie needs what you can offer. We proceed quietly, let our work speak for itself." Elena nodded slowly. "Okay," quietly. She stood, smoothing her skirt. "I should get back to the laundromat." "Elena?" Ethan called as she reached the door. "I truly am sorry about this." She managed a small smile. "Not your fault. We'll figure it out." The walk home that evening felt longer than usual. The air was heavy with approaching rain, matching Elena's mood. As she passed the Turner house, Mrs. Turner and her friend Mrs. Turner Keene sat on the porch, their conversation dropping to whispers as Elena approached. She felt their stares boring into her back as she walked by. "Evening," she called out politely, but received only cool nods in return. Their whispers resumed before she'd gone 10 steps, carrying just enough for her to catch fragments. "Moving awfully fast. And, poor little girl needs a mother, but—" Elena quickened her pace, clutching her purse tighter. The weight of their judgment pressed down on her shoulders, heavier than the threatening rain clouds above. She thought of Micah waiting at home with their elderly neighbor, probably hungry for dinner, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around them. Her shoes clicked against the cracked sidewalk, each step taking her closer to home but unable to outpace the whispers that seemed to follow in her wake. The porch lights of her small rental house had never looked more welcoming. The early morning sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Mark's Church Hall, casting rainbow patterns across the long wooden tables. Elena arranged supplies, while Retta directed choir members where to place boxes of materials. The hall buzzed with cheerful energy as volunteers unpacked crayons, wooden rhythm sticks, and small prayer books. "These pocket psalms are perfect," Retta said, holding up one of the slim blue booklets. "Just the right size for little hands." She passed it to Mrs. Chen, who added it to the growing pile of comfort kits they were assembling. Elena smiled, watching the elderly choir members work with careful precision. Mr. Imila Johnson, a retired music teacher, tested each pair of rhythm sticks with a gentle tap-tap-tap before adding them to the kits. Miss Dorothy carefully tied blue ribbons around sets of colored pencils, her arthritis-curved fingers moving slowly but steadily. "Remember what I always say," Retta announced to the group. "Music soothes the soul, but it works even better with something to hold on to." She demonstrated by crossing the rhythm sticks in a simple pattern that made several volunteers chuckle. Elena moved between the tables, checking the contents of each kit. 2 rhythm sticks, 1 pocket psalms book, a pack of crayons or colored pencils, and a small notebook with musical staff paper. Each item went into a drawstring bag made from donated fabric, sewn by the church quilting circle. "How many children are we expecting for the first session?" Mrs. Chen asked, tying another bag closed. 15 confirmed so far, Elena replied, making notes on her clipboard. "But we're making extra kits, just in case." She didn't mention how the nasty social media post had caused 2 families to withdraw their children from the program. The thought still stung. As if reading her mind, Retta appeared at her side. "Don't you worry about those rumors, child. Good work speaks louder than gossip." She squeezed Elena's shoulder. "Now, let's get these loaded up." They formed a chain, passing bags from hand to hand out to Mr. Johnson's station wagon and Retta's sensible sedan. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass from the church lawn. Elena checked her watch. They were right on schedule to deliver everything to the Arts Center before the children arrived for the trial session. At the center, Micah helped Elena and the volunteers arrange the comfort kits on shelves in the activity room. His eyes lit up when he saw the rhythm sticks. "Can I try them, Mom? Please?" "Sure, sweetie. Just be gentle." Elena handed him a pair, watching as he carefully tapped out the pattern Retta had shown them earlier. The door creaked open, and Sadie peeked in, holding tight to her father's hand. When she saw Micah playing with the rhythm sticks, she took a tentative step forward. "Would you like to try too?" Micah asked, holding out a spare pair to Sadie. She looked up at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead, Princess." Sadie accepted the sticks, and Micah showed her how to tap them together. Soon, they were creating simple rhythms, their laughter echoing off the walls. Other children began arriving, drawn to the sound of clacking sticks and giggling. Retta gathered the volunteers in a corner, showing them how to guide the children through basic rhythms. "Remember," she instructed, "let them set the pace. This isn't about perfection, it's about comfort." Elena watched as seniors paired up with children, gentle hands guiding small ones through musical patterns. Mrs. Chen sat with a shy little boy, speaking softly in Mandarin, as they explored the contents of his kit together. Mr. Johnson had 3 children captivated with a story about drumming in his school band 60 years ago. "This is remarkable," Ethan's voice came from behind her. Elena turned to find him watching the scene with obvious approval. "The way they're all connecting, it's exactly what I hoped for." "The volunteers are amazing," Elena agreed. "They just know instinctively how to make the children feel safe." They watched as Sadie showed another little girl how to make a heart pattern with her rhythm sticks, her usual anxiety nowhere in sight. Micah moved between groups, demonstrating the patterns he'd learned and beaming with pride when younger children copied him. "The comfort kits were a brilliant idea," Ethan said. "Giving them something tangible to take home, something that's just theirs." He paused, then added more quietly, "Sadie slept with her pocket, Psalms under her pillow last night. First time she's done that with anything but her mother's photo." Elena felt her throat tighten with emotion. Before she could respond, Retta called everyone to attention for a group rhythm exercise. The room filled with the sound of tapping sticks and children's voices counting together. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The morning passed quickly. Parents arrived to collect their children, many lingering to watch the activities and ask about future sessions. Elena overheard several mothers exchanging phone numbers, planning to coordinate rides for the next meeting. As the last family left, the volunteers began tidying up. Elena helped stack chairs while Micah and Sadie sorted fallen crayons into color groups. "We did good today," Retta declared, adjusting her purse strap. "Real good." The other volunteers nodded in agreement as they gathered their belongings and headed out, leaving Elena to do the final lockup. She moved through the rooms, straightening comfort kits and checking windows. The late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, making the rhythm sticks cast long shadows on the shelves. In the quiet, she could still hear echoes of the day's laughter and music. Elena saved the activity room for last. She found Ethan there, helping Sadie pack up her comfort kit. "Thank you," he said simply, "for all of this." Sadie hugged her kit to her chest, smiling shyly at Elena before taking her father's hand. They headed out together while Elena turned off the lights and set the alarm. Outside, she took a moment to breathe in the cooling evening air. Across the street, a figure stood in the shadows of the bank building, but Elena was too preoccupied with her thoughts of the day's success to notice Gerald Pickens watching her lock the door. The Community Arts Center hummed with activity as families streamed through the double doors. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, warming the polished wooden floors where children already sat in small circles with senior volunteers. Elena stood near the entrance, greeting each newcomer with a bright smile and a name tag. "Welcome to our first open house," she said to a mother carrying a shy toddler. "We've got music stations set up all around the room." Mr. Thompson, a retired band teacher with silver hair, sat cross-legged on a cushion, showing 3 children how to tap rhythms with wooden sticks. His patient hands guided their smaller ones through a simple beat pattern. "That's it," he encouraged, "just like a heartbeat." Across the room, Mrs. Chen led a group in head, shoulders, knees, and toes, her movements slow and deliberate. The kids followed along, giggling when they got tangled up in the motions. Even the most anxious children seemed drawn to her gentle manner. Retta positioned herself at the upright piano, playing soft background tunes that filled the space without overwhelming it. She caught Elena's eye and winked, her fingers dancing across the keys in a light melody. "This is amazing," Ethan said, appearing at Elena's side. He wore a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "I counted 30 families already." Elena nodded, watching Sadie skip past with a tambourine. "The seniors are natural with the kids. Look at Mr. Thompson over there. He's got them all following his lead perfectly." A young woman with a press badge approached them, notebook in hand. "I'm Sarah Chen from the Herald," she said. "Would you mind telling me about this program? It's not every day you see 3 generations making music together like this." Before Elena could respond, Micah tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, can I do the Brave song now, please?" Elena glanced at her watch. "Perfect timing, sweetheart. Why don't you go get everyone ready while I help Miss Chen find a good spot to watch?" Micah beamed, and ran to gather his friends. The reporter followed Elena to the side of the room, where they had a clear view of the performance area. Ethan stood nearby, pride evident in his expression as Sadie joined the group of children assembling near the piano. Retta played a gentle introduction, and Micah stepped forward. His clear voice rang out, starting the simple tune he'd created. "When I'm scared and feeling small, I can stand up brave and tall. Take a breath and count to 4. Let it out and count some more." Other children joined in, their voices growing stronger with each line. Sadie stood right beside Micah, singing without hesitation. The seniors hummed harmony in the background, creating a warm blanket of sound that wrapped around the room. Parents wiped away tears as they watched their usually anxious children perform with such confidence. The reporter scribbled rapidly in her notebook, pausing occasionally to snap photos with her phone. When the song ended, applause erupted throughout the room. Micah and Sadie exchanged a high five, their faces glowing with accomplishment. "Mr. Caldwell," Sarah said, turning to Ethan, "what inspired you to fund this program?" Ethan placed a gentle hand on Sadie's shoulder as she ran up to him. "Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places," he answered, smiling at Elena. "Miss Porter showed me how music could reach children in ways nothing else could." "And Ms. Porter, how did you develop this intergenerational approach?" Elena watched Mr. Thompson demonstrate a new rhythm game to an enthusiastic group. "Children need to feel safe to heal," she explained. "Our senior volunteers bring patience, wisdom, and unconditional acceptance. That's something you can't put a price on." The reporter interviewed several parents next, including a young mother who described how her son had started sleeping through the night since joining the program. Seniors shared stories about feeling needed again, about the joy of passing on their love of music to a new generation. As the open house wound down, families lingered to chat and help stack chairs. Children taught their parents the breathing exercises they'd learned, and several seniors made plans to carpool to next week's session. Elena watched Micah and Sadie sitting with Retta at the piano, picking out simple melodies together. The sight warmed her heart. This was exactly what she'd hoped the program could be. "You've created something special here," Ethan said quietly, joining her. "The board will be impressed when they see the Herald's coverage." "We all created this," Elena corrected him. "It takes a whole community to make something like this work." They watched as Mr. Thompson taught a group of parents and kids his special handshake, everyone laughing as they tried to keep up with the complicated sequence. Mrs. Jen led another group in a farewell song, complete with gentle movements that even the smallest toddlers could follow. As the last families headed home, Elena gathered her things and helped Retta close up the piano. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor, but the room still seemed to hold the warmth and joy of the day's events. "Need a ride home?" Ethan offered, holding Sadie's hand. "Thanks, but I've got my car," Elena replied, taking Micah's backpack. "Besides, I think someone's ready for dinner and a good night's sleep." She ruffled Micah's hair as he tried unsuccessfully to suppress a yawn. They walked together to the parking lot, where families were still calling out goodbyes and making plans to meet again. The success of the open house felt like a confirmation. They were on the right path, helping children and seniors connect in ways that transformed both groups. Elena buckled Micah into his booster seat, her heart full from the day's events. As she drove home through the quiet streets, she couldn't stop smiling, remembering the sound of all those voices joined together in Micah's brave song. Gerald Pickens sat in his home office, the glow of his computer screen reflecting off his wire-rimmed glasses. The clock on the wall showed 6:45 a.m. He drummed his manicured fingers on the desk before picking up his phone and scrolling through his contacts. "Josh, Gerald Pickens here." He leaned back in his leather chair. "Remember that favor you owe me from the school board coverage? I've got something interesting for that blog of yours." He paused, listening to the voice on the other end. "Oh, it's quite the story. You know Ethan Caldwell? The businessman funding half the town's projects?" Gerald's lips curled into a smile. "Well, he just hired this single mother to run his arts program. No formal qualifications, worked at a laundromat until last week." The morning sun crept through his window as Gerald continued. But here's the interesting part. Her kid's been telling people Caldwell's his father, and she's already getting quite comfortable at his estate. He clicked through some photos on his computer. I've got witnesses who saw them there. Very cozy scene. After hanging up, Gerald opened his email and attached several carefully selected documents: Elena's old job application to the school district, the recent Arts Center announcement, and a blurry photo from the Caldwell estate. His finger hovered over the send button for just a moment before pressing it. By mid-morning, the story was live. The blog post didn't name Elena directly, but the implications were clear. Local businessman's curious hire raises questions. The article questioned her sudden career jump and hinted at personal connections, influencing the decision. At the laundromat, Gina Morales nearly dropped her phone when she saw the article. She immediately called Elena, who was setting up the Arts Center for morning activities. "Girl, you need to see this," Gina said, her voice tight with concern. "Some trashy blog is writing about you and Ethan." Elena balanced her phone against her shoulder while arranging rhythm sticks in colorful bins. "What do you mean?" "They're making it sound like, well, like you got the job because you and Ethan," Gina trailed off. "It's ugly, Elena. They're questioning your qualifications and everything." Elena's hands stilled on the instruments. "That's ridiculous. I got this job because I helped Sadie during a panic attack. Ethan saw what I could do firsthand." "I know that, but people are already sharing it. The comments are getting nasty." Elena tried to keep her voice steady. "It's just an anonymous blog. No one takes those seriously." But her hands trembled slightly as she finished setting up. When Ethan arrived an hour later, she could tell by his expression that he'd seen it too. "I'm so sorry about this," he said, closing the classroom door behind him. "My lawyer's already working on getting it taken down." Elena shook her head. "You don't need to do that. It'll blow over." "No, Elena." Ethan's voice was firm. "This isn't just gossip anymore. They're attacking your reputation, your qualifications. I won't let them hurt the program, or you, like this." She looked at him, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes. "I've dealt with worse," she said softly, though her stomach churned at the thought of facing more public scrutiny. "You shouldn't have to." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I'll handle this. Just keep doing the amazing work you're doing here." The day passed in a blur of activities, but Elena felt eyes on her everywhere she went. At the grocery store after work, a former PTA mom quickly turned down another aisle when she saw Elena coming. At the gas station, she heard whispers behind her back. She tried to focus on preparing dinner, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. The front door opened and closed. Micah was home from his after-school program. Usually, he'd bounce in talking about his day, but today he walked slowly to the kitchen table and sat down without a word. Elena wiped her hands on a dish towel. "Hey, sweetie, how was school?" Micah stared at his hands. "Tommy and Derek said I was lying about having a new rich dad." His voice quivered. "They said mean things about you, too." Elena's heart clenched. She pulled out a chair next to him. "Oh, Micah. I told them Mr. Caldwell's not my dad," he continued, tears welling up. "I just meant that one time when you said good dads are like him, remember? But they wouldn't listen." Elena pulled him into a hug, feeling his small shoulders shake. She remembered that bedtime conversation months ago, when Micah had asked about fathers. She'd used Ethan as an example of a good father figure, the way he cared for Sadie, how he helped others in the community. She never imagined those innocent words would be twisted like this. "Some people say unkind things when they don't understand," she said, stroking his hair. "But we know the truth, don't we?" Micah nodded against her shoulder. "Can I still go to the Arts Center? I like it there." "Of course you can." Elena pulled back to look at him. "We're not going to let mean words stop us from doing good things, right?" "Right." He managed a small smile. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" Elena laughed softly, grateful for his resilience. "You got it, buddy." But as she stirred the pasta, she couldn't shake the weight in her chest. The blog post was just the beginning. She could feel it. And now, it wasn't just affecting her, but Micah too. She glanced at her phone, seeing notifications from concerned friends and a message from Ethan asking if she was okay. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched Micah setting the table, humming the brave song they'd been teaching the kids at the center. Whatever storm was coming, she had to find the strength to weather it, for him, for Sadie, for all the children who were finally finding their voice through music. Saturday dawned bright and crisp, with autumn leaves dancing in the morning breeze. Retta Hayes stood on her wraparound porch, clipboard in hand, directing traffic like a seasoned orchestra conductor. Seniors from the choir gathered around her, some carrying guitars, others holding sheet music. "Now remember, folks," Retta announced, her voice carrying across her front yard, "we're bringing music to people's doorsteps today. Some of these children have never heard live music up close." Elena helped Micah carry his toy keyboard up the porch steps. She watched as more volunteers arrived, retired teachers with their tambourines, grandparents with their grandchildren, and several veterans wearing their service caps. "Miss Retta," called out Mr. Jenkins, a Vietnam veteran who walked with a slight limp. "Got room for a few more? The guys from the VA wanted to join in." Retta's face lit up. "Of course, the more the merrier. You men know any lullabies from your service days?" "Ma'am, we know songs from every corner of the world," another veteran replied, adjusting his Navy cap. The group organized itself into smaller teams, each assigned different streets in the neighborhood. Elena found herself with Micah, 2 elderly choir ladies, and 3 veterans in her group. They would start on Maple Street and work their way toward the town center. Their first stop was at the Wilson family's house, where 3 young children pressed their faces against the screen door. The veterans began with "You Are My Sunshine," their weathered voices blending in perfect harmony. The children's mother wiped tears from her eyes as she listened from her porch swing. At each house, they gathered more followers. Children emerged from their homes, parents stood in doorways, and neighbors pulled lawn chairs onto their driveways. The music seemed to break down invisible barriers between houses and hearts. Halfway through their route, Elena spotted Ethan's car pulling up. He helped Sadie out, and Elena's heart warmed at the sight of the little girl's face. Gone was the usual tension in her shoulders. Instead, Sadie swayed gently to the music, holding her father's hand. "Can we follow them?" Sadie asked Ethan, her voice carrying across the quiet street. "Of course, Princess," Ethan replied. And they joined the growing parade of music makers and listeners. Mr. Jenkins taught the children a gentle Filipino lullaby he'd learned during his service. The mothers in the villages would sing this to their babies, he explained, his voice soft with memory. Even when we couldn't understand the words, we knew exactly what they meant. The children picked up the melody quickly, and soon the sound of young voices mixed with old floated through the neighborhood. Sadie, usually so hesitant to join group activities, found herself standing next to Micah, both of them following along with the simple chorus. As they moved from street to street, more veterans shared their songs. There was a German cradle song, a Korean lullaby, and even a sweet Italian tune that had everyone swaying. Each melody carried its own story of comfort found far from home. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as they approached their final stops. Porch lights began clicking on, creating pools of warm light in the growing dusk. The music took on an almost magical quality in the twilight, drifting through the streets like a gentle blessing. Mrs. Rodriguez, who rarely left her house, stood in her doorway with tears streaming down her face. "Mi madre used to sing that song," she whispered, as the group performed a Spanish lullaby one of the veterans had learned in Puerto Rico. Retta moved through the crowd, her clipboard long forgotten, humming along and squeezing shoulders. She caught Elena's eye and winked, both of them knowing that something special was happening in their town tonight. On the final porch, everyone gathered together. Veterans, choir members, children, and families who had joined along the way. They sang "Amazing Grace," the same song Elena had hummed to Sadie that day in the mall. Sadie, now sitting on her father's shoulders, sang out clear and strong. The last notes hung in the air as darkness settled over the neighborhood. No one rushed to leave. The usual evening sounds of televisions and car doors were absent. replaced by a peaceful quiet that seemed to blanket the whole town. Elena watched as Sadie slipped her small hand into Micah's, both children still humming softly. Ethan stood nearby, his expression one of wonder, as he watched his daughter's transformation. The music had done what weeks of therapy couldn't. It had given Sadie a voice and a community that understood her. As families began to drift toward home, the music lingered in the air like a lullaby, soothing the town into a gentle, peaceful evening. The veterans gathered their instruments, sharing quiet laughs and pats on the back. Children walked home hand in hand with their parents, still humming the melodies they'd learned. The usual Saturday night bustle was replaced by something gentler, as if the whole town was being rocked to sleep by the echoes of songs from faraway places and times. Streets that usually buzzed with activity fell quiet, each house holding the day's music like a treasured gift. Elena arrived early at the Community Arts Center that Monday morning, her arms full of sheet music and rhythm sticks from Saturday's porch concerts. The hallways still echoed with weekend silence, but sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting warm patterns on the freshly polished floors. She was arranging materials in the children's wing when she heard Ethan's familiar footsteps. He appeared in the doorway, dressed in his usual crisp business attire, but wearing an unusually bright expression. "Good morning," he said, holding 2 paper cups. "I brought coffee." Elena accepted the cup gratefully. "Thank you. I was just sorting through the feedback forms from Saturday. The porch concerts were a huge success." "That's actually what I wanted to discuss." Ethan pulled up a child-sized chair, looking somewhat comical as he tried to fit his tall frame into it. "The way you've developed this program, it's exceeded all expectations." Elena sat down across from him, warming her hands on the coffee cup. "The seniors deserve most of the credit. They've been amazing volunteers." "You're being modest." Ethan leaned forward, his voice taking on an excited edge she'd rarely heard from him. "What you've created here isn't just a children's program anymore. It's bringing together entire families, bridging generations. I've been thinking." He stood up and walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. "What if we expanded this into a full family arts initiative?" Elena watched as he began sketching out an organizational chart. "What exactly do you mean?" "Instead of just focusing on children with anxiety, we could create programs for the whole family. Parent-child music classes, grandparent story hours, family choir." His marker squeaked across the board as he wrote, "And I want you to direct it all." Elena nearly choked on her coffee. "Me? But I'm just the person who turned a simple children's program into something the whole town is talking about," Ethan finished. "You have a gift for this, Elena. You understand what families need." She set her cup down carefully, trying to process his words. "It's a huge responsibility. One you're ready for." He capped the marker and turned to face her. "We'd need to hire more staff, of course. Set up proper funding channels. But imagine what we could do with more resources." Elena stood up and walked to the whiteboard, studying his notes. Her mind was already racing with possibilities. Evening classes for working parents, weekend workshops, maybe even a scholarship program for low-income families. "We'd need more space," she said thoughtfully. "The West Wing is empty. We could renovate." Ethan pulled out his tablet and opened a spreadsheet. "I've already drafted some preliminary numbers." They spent the next hour going through logistics. Ethan had clearly given this serious thought. He showed her budget projections, potential staffing structures, and a timeline for expansion. "The Town Arts Gala is next month," he explained, scrolling through his calendar. "It would be the perfect opportunity to present this to potential donors. All the major community supporters will be there." Elena felt a flutter of nervousness. "You want me to present?" "With me," Ethan assured her. "We'll work on it together. The donors need to see your passion for this work." They moved to his office, where a large conference table provided more space to spread out their materials. Elena found herself getting caught up in the excitement of planning. She described her vision for intergenerational programs, while Ethan took notes and added practical suggestions about implementation. "We could partner with the senior center," she said, sketching out a weekly schedule. Many of their members already volunteer with us. Good thinking. I'll talk to their director. Ethan made a note. What about transportation? Some families might need help getting here. Maybe we could arrange carpools? Or, Elena hesitated, then pressed on. If we had a van. Add it to the proposal, Ethan said without hesitation. Transportation assistance could make this accessible to more families. By lunchtime, they had filled several pages with ideas and action items. Elena's head was spinning with possibilities, but in a good way. This was so much bigger than anything she'd imagined when she first knelt beside a crying child in the mall. I should warn you, Ethan said as they wrapped up. This role would mean more public speaking, more community interaction. Are you comfortable with that? Elena thought about it. A few months ago, the idea would have terrified her. But after the porch concerts, after seeing how music could bring people together, yes, she said firmly, I am. Ethan smiled. Good. Because I think you're exactly what this community needs. They spent another hour outlining the presentation for the gala. Ethan suggested including videos from the porch concerts and testimonials from families. Elena added ideas for demonstrating some of their calming techniques live. We'll need to prepare thoroughly, Ethan said. These donors can be particular. I understand. Elena gathered her notes. I want to do this right. As the day wound down, Elena packed up her materials, her mind still buzzing with plans. Ethan walked her to the door. Thank you for believing in this, she said. In me. You've earned it, he replied simply. Outside, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Elena walked home slowly, savoring the gentle evening air. Each step felt lighter than the last. After years of setbacks and closed doors, something was finally opening up, something bigger and better than she'd dared to hope for. The familiar houses of her neighborhood came into view, their windows glowing warmly in the dusk. She thought about Micah, about Sadie, about all the children who might benefit from this expansion. Maybe this was what Retta meant about God opening doors. Maybe sometimes you just had to be brave enough to walk through them. Elena stood before her bedroom mirror, smoothing the fabric of her navy dress. It was simple but elegant, the nicest thing she owned, saved for special occasions. The dress had been a gift from Retta last Christmas, chosen with care to make Elena feel both confident and comfortable. She touched the small silver cross at her neck, a familiar gesture that always brought her peace. The community center's annual Town Arts Gala was being held at the Renaissance Hotel downtown, in a ballroom that could hold 300 people. Elena had driven past the hotel countless times but had never been inside. Now, stepping through its grand entrance, she felt like she was entering another world. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the marble floors. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. Servers in black ties weaved through the crowd carrying trays of tiny appetizers Elena couldn't name. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she belonged here not because of her dress or social status, but because of the work she'd done. Ethan met her near the entrance, looking distinguished in a dark suit. His face brightened when he saw her. "Elena, you look lovely," he said, his voice carrying its usual quiet sincerity. "Are you ready to meet some people who've been very excited to hear about our program?" She nodded, grateful for his steady presence. "As ready as I'll ever be." He guided her through the crowd with gentle introductions. "This is Elena Grace Porter, the heart behind our New Children's Initiative," he would say, and then step back slightly, letting her explain their work in her own words. The donors listened intently as Elena described their progress. She told them about the comfort kits, the senior volunteers, and the transformation she'd seen in children like Sadie. Her voice grew stronger with each conversation, fueled by passion for what they'd built. "The impact has been remarkable," said Mrs. Harrison, a silver-haired woman who served on several charitable boards. "We need more programs like this." Mr. Chen, whose technology company had funded several arts initiatives, nodded in agreement. "Sometimes the simplest ideas have the most profound effects." The evening seemed to float by in a pleasant haze. Elena found herself relaxing, even enjoying the elegant atmosphere. Servers offered her delicate pastries and sparkling water. The chamber music playing softly in the background reminded her of the lullabies their veterans had shared during the porch concerts. Just before 9 o'clock, the board chair, Douglas Warner, stepped up to the podium. The crowd began to quiet down, moving toward their seats at the round tables, draped in cream-colored linens. Ethan pulled out Elena's chair at the head table, then settled into his own seat beside her. He was scheduled to speak after Warner's introduction, and Elena could see his speech notes tucked carefully in his jacket pocket. Warner had just begun welcoming everyone when Elena noticed Ethan's phone screen light up. He glanced down, and she saw his expression change as subtle, but unmistakable. The color drained from his face. Under the table, his hand trembled slightly as he opened the link that had been sent to him. Elena caught a glimpse of the screen. A website she didn't recognize, but the photo was immediately familiar. It was the image taken by the groundskeeper that day at Ethan's house, when Micah had made his innocent comment. But below it was something new, what appeared to be a text message exchange between her and Ethan. Elena's heart stopped. She had never sent those messages. The words on the screen suggested she had tried to leverage Micah's comment for financial gain, hinting at some sort of payoff to keep quiet. The fabrication was cruel and calculated. The warmth that had filled her all evening evaporated in an instant. She felt a chill run down her spine as she became aware of shifting movements around the room. Phones were being checked. Whispers started. Heads turned. Mrs. Harrison, who had been so enthusiastic earlier, was now leaning close to Mr. Chen, speaking behind her hand. Their eyes darted toward Elena, then quickly away. Through the fog of shock, Elena heard Warner's voice continuing at the podium, but the words seemed distant and muffled. She forced herself to sit straight, to keep her face composed, even as she felt her world tilting sideways. Ethan sat rigid beside her, his speech notes forgotten. She could sense him struggling with what to do, how to respond. The board chair had finished his introduction and was looking expectantly their way. Elena watched as Rebecca Whitman, one of the major sponsors, showed something on her phone to her husband. He frowned deeply, then whispered to the couple at the next table. The ripple effect was visible, like watching a shadow spread across a sunny day. The beautiful ballroom suddenly felt suffocating. The crystal chandeliers that had seemed so magical now felt like they were casting harsh, exposing light. Elena's simple navy dress, which had made her feel elegant earlier, now seemed to mark her as an outsider who had tried to reach above her station. Warner's voice faltered slightly as he reached the part of his speech where he was supposed to announce the program's expansion. He glanced at the board members seated at a nearby table, several of whom were now wearing stern expressions as they studied their phones. Elena felt the weight of every stare, heard the undercurrent of every whisper. The careful bridge she and Ethan had built between their different worlds was crumbling. All their work, the comfort kits, the volunteer program, the children's progress, was being overshadowed by a cruel lie. The warmth and acceptance she'd felt just moments ago vanished completely, replaced by a familiar cold dread. She recognized this feeling. It was the same one she'd experienced when she'd lost her job at the elementary school. The sensation of being judged and found wanting, not based on truth or merit, but on assumptions and prejudices. She looked down at her hands folded in her lap, the simple silver cross now feeling heavy against her throat. The chamber music played on, but she could no longer find any comfort in its gentle notes. Elena's phone chimed at 7:43 a.m. The sound pulled her from a restless sleep, her navy dress still draped over the bedroom chair from the night before. She reached for her phone, squinting at the screen. The email's subject line made her stomach drop. Notice of administrative leave, immediate effect. The message was formal, cold. The board had voted to suspend her position pending a full review of recent allegations. The pilot program would be temporarily paused to ensure the well-being of all participants. Elena read it 3 times, each word hitting harder than the last. In the kitchen, Micah sat at the table, pushing his cereal around without eating. "Do I have to go to school today?" he asked, his voice small. Elena wanted to say no, to keep him safe at home, but she knew hiding wouldn't help. "Yes, sweetheart, remember what we say about being brave?" "Brave doesn't mean not scared," Micah recited. "It means doing what's right, even when we're scared." The morning crawled by. Elena called Retta, who offered to drive Micah to school. Then her phone buzzed again, a text from Ethan. "Sadie won't stop crying. Can't get her out of her closet." Elena's heart ached. She'd grown to love that little girl, who'd made such progress. Before she could reply, another text came. "The therapist says she's back to where she was 6 months ago." Around noon the doorbell rang. Ethan stood there, looking exhausted. His usual crisp appearance was rumpled, his tie loose. "I'm sorry," he said, stepping inside. "I should have seen this coming. Should have done more to stop it." "How's Sadie?" Elena asked, leading him to the kitchen. "Bad." Ethan slumped into a chair. "She's refusing to go back to the center. Says she doesn't want to make music anymore." He rubbed his face. "Elena, I don't know what to do. The board's pressuring me to distance myself from the program entirely. And from me," Elena added quietly. "They're concerned about Sadie's welfare, the publicity, the stress." He trailed off, looking miserable. "My priority has to be protecting her." Elena nodded, her throat tight. "I understand." "The thing is," Ethan continued, "everything you built was working. The seniors, the comfort kits, the music therapy, it was all making a real difference. But now—" The phone rang, interrupting him. It was Micah's school. He'd refused to go to music class, hiding under the teacher's desk. When they tried to coax him out, he'd started crying, saying he didn't want to sing anymore because singing makes people mad at mommy. Elena drove to pick him up, her vision blurring with tears she wouldn't let fall. In the car, Micah was unnaturally quiet, clutching his backpack like a shield. That afternoon, Elena walked into the laundromat for her scheduled shift. The usual customers fell silent as she entered. Mrs. Peterson, who'd always been friendly, gathered her clothes and hurried out without meeting Elena's eyes. Two women by the folding table whispered behind their hands, shooting glances her way. Gina approached cautiously. "Elena, honey, maybe you should take some time off. Until this all," she gestured vaguely. "Until what, Gina? Until people stop believing lies?" Elena's voice cracked. "Until they forget I exist?" She untied her apron, placed it on the counter, and wrote out a quick resignation note. Her hands were steady, even as her world crumbled around her. "Tell Mr. Rodriguez I'm sorry. He's been good to me." The walk home felt endless. The same streets she'd walked for years now seemed hostile, every window potentially hiding judging eyes. She thought of the seniors who'd volunteered, the children who'd started to heal, the families who'd found hope in their little program. All of it suspended because of whispers and assumptions. At home, Elena sat at her kitchen table as darkness fell. She didn't turn on the lights. The silence was broken only by the tick of the wall clock, the one her father had given her when she'd bought this small house, telling her it would help mark the good times to come. The clock struck 10, then 11. She remained there, still in her work clothes, surrounded by the remnants of the morning's rushed breakfast. Micah's half-eaten cereal bowl, his dinosaur placemat, the Brave Song sheet music he'd been so proud of, now crumpled at the edge of the table. Somewhere in town, she knew, Sadie was probably still awake too, maybe hiding in her closet, afraid of the world again. The thought of all their progress unraveling felt like a physical pain in Elena's chest. She reached for her phone, wanting to text Ethan, to ask about Sadie, to try to fix something, anything. But she stopped herself. He'd made his choice. His priority was his daughter, as it should be. Elena finally stood, her joints stiff from sitting so long. The kitchen window reflected her image, a woman alone in the dark, trying to hold on to her dignity while everything she'd built slipped away. She touched the silver cross at her neck, but tonight, even that familiar comfort felt distant. 2 days after her suspension, Elena sat at her kitchen table, staring at the untouched coffee growing cold before her. The morning sun filtered through the worn curtains, casting long shadows across the empty chairs where children once practiced their pocket breaths during informal planning sessions. The silence in her house felt heavy, a stark contrast to the joyful chaos that had filled her life these past weeks. A familiar knock echoed through the house, 3 quick taps followed by 2 slow ones. Retta's signature rhythm. Elena slowly made her way to the door, her feet dragging against the worn carpet. "Child, you look like you haven't slept in days," Retta said. Her warm brown eyes filled with concern. In her arms, she cradled a battered shoebox tied with fraying twine. The box had clearly seen better days, its corners soft and worn. "I haven't really," Elena admitted, stepping aside to let her friend in. "Micah's having nightmares again." Retta set the box on the kitchen table and put her hands on her hips. "Well, this might help both of you sleep better. Go on, open it." Elena untied the twine with trembling fingers. Inside, dozens of envelopes and folded papers filled the box to the brim. Some were written on proper stationery, others on the backs of receipts or torn notebook pages. She picked up the first letter, recognizing Mr. Thompson's shaky handwriting. "Dear Elena," she read aloud, her voice catching. "For 30 years after retiring from the factory, I thought my hands were only good for holding the TV remote. Then you put those rhythm sticks in my grip and showed me how to teach little ones to keep time. Now when I wake up, I have somewhere to be, someone to help. You gave this old man his purpose back." "Keep reading," Retta urged softly, settling into a chair beside her. Elena pulled out another letter. This one was from Mrs. Chen, who had lost her husband last year. "The children's laughter reminds me of when my own were small," she read. "When we sing together, the loneliness doesn't feel so heavy." Letter after letter spilled their contents across her table. Veterans who found peace in teaching lullabies. Retired teachers who rediscovered their calling. Widows and widowers who found family among the chaos of toddler music classes. "These people," Elena whispered, touching the papers gently, "they all took time to write." "Every single one," Retta confirmed. "And there are more coming. The seniors won't let this program die, Elena, neither should you." Before Elena could respond, another knock sounded at the door. This time, it was Pastor Brooks, his kind face creased with concern. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, taking in the scattered letters. "But I felt led to stop by." "You're always welcome, Pastor," Elena said, quickly wiping her eyes. "Would you like some coffee? I should make a fresh pot anyway." "That would be lovely." He settled into a chair, while Elena busied herself with the coffee maker. "You know, all this reminds me of something your father used to say when he directed the gospel choir." Elena's hand stilled on the coffee filter. "What was that?" "When the music sounds wrong," Pastor Brooks quoted, "check the tuning, not the song." He leaned forward, his eyes intent. "The song here, bringing comfort to anxious children, purpose to isolated seniors, hope to this community, that song is divine harmony. But people's assumptions, their prejudices, that's just poor tuning. My father would say that when the sopranos went sharp," Elena remembered, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "He never blamed the music itself." "Exactly." Pastor Brooks accepted the fresh coffee she handed him. "And he never let a poorly tuned instrument keep him from making music. He'd just patiently adjust until things were right." Retta nodded vigorously. "That's what we need to do here. Adjust the tuning, show people the truth." "But how?" Elena sank into her chair. "The rumors are everywhere. That fake screenshot made it look like I was trying to blackmail Ethan. People want to believe the worst." "Then we help them believe the best," Pastor Brooks said simply. "Not with more rumors or accusations, but with truth. With the evidence of lives changed." He gestured to the letters scattered across the table. "With these stories." Elena picked up another letter, this one from Mr. Rodriguez, a retired mailman. His granddaughter had stopped having panic attacks since joining the program. The words blurred as fresh tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of despair. "Your father also used to say something else," Pastor Brooks continued softly. "He'd tell the choir, fear and faith can't occupy the same space. Choose faith. Elena looked around her kitchen, at Retta's determined face, at Pastor Brooks's gentle encouragement, at the dozens of letters testifying to the program's impact. She thought of Micah's brave song and Sadie's first peaceful night's sleep. She thought of her father, who never let criticism silence his music. Standing up, Elena walked to her desk in the corner of the living room. She pulled out a fresh notebook and a pen, then carefully placed the shoebox of letters beside it. Her hand was steady as she opened to the first clean page. "What are you doing?" Retta asked, though her smile suggested she already knew. "Checking the tuning," Elena replied, beginning to write. "These letters tell the real story. It's time everyone heard it." Ethan Caldwell sat in his home office, surrounded by stacks of financial reports and shipping manifests. But his attention wasn't on logistics. It was fixed on his computer screen, where he'd spent the last 3 hours tracing the digital footprints of the anonymous blog that had attacked Elena. His fingers tapped steadily on the keyboard as he followed link after link. Years of business experience had taught him that money always left a trail. The blog's domain registration led to a shell company, which connected to another, and another, but Ethan was patient. Finally, a payment traced back to Midstate Logistics, his biggest competitor in the region. "Got you," he muttered, leaning back in his chair. He picked up his phone and dialed his attorney's direct line. "Jim? I need everything you can find on recent communications between Midstate Logistics and Gerald Pickens." He paused, listening. "Yes, the school board member. I have reason to believe he's been feeding them information." While his legal team worked, Ethan pulled out a fresh notepad and began making calls. The first was to Dr. Sarah Chen, Sadie's therapist. "Mr. Caldwell," Dr. Chen answered warmly. "Sadie mentioned she's having trouble sleeping again." "That's partly why I'm calling," Ethan said. "I need your professional assessment of Sadie's progress during the arts program. Would you be willing to provide documentation?" "Absolutely. Elena's methods aligned perfectly with our therapeutic goals. I've never seen such improvement in Sadie's anxiety levels." One by one, Ethan contacted parents whose children had participated in the program. Martha Winston, whose grandson had stopped having tantrums. James Rodriguez, whose daughter now used pocket breaths instead of hiding in closets. Wei Chen, whose twins had finally found the courage to perform in public. Each conversation strengthened his resolve. He recorded their statements, asked permission to share their stories. By early afternoon, he had a folder full of testimonials. The hardest part came next. Ethan drove to Elena's house, knowing he needed to talk to Micah. He found them in the backyard, where Elena was hanging laundry while Micah listlessly pushed a toy truck through the grass. "Elena," he called softly from the gate. "I know this is unexpected, but I need 5 minutes with Micah, with your permission." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Micah, honey? Mr. Caldwell would like to talk to you." Micah approached cautiously, looking up at Ethan with serious eyes. Ethan knelt down to his level. "Hey, buddy," he said gently. "Remember that day at my house, when you saw the picture of Sadie's mom?" Micah nodded, glancing at Elena. "Could you tell me about that day? About what you said and why?" The boy's face scrunched in concentration. "I saw the pretty lady holding baby Sadie. And I remembered when I asked Mommy about daddies, 'cause Tommy at school has one. Mommy said good daddies are kind and take care of people, like you do. But I got mixed up." His lower lip trembled. "I didn't mean to make people mad." "You didn't do anything wrong," Ethan assured him. "Would you be brave enough to tell that story to some other people, to help them understand?" After getting Micah's agreement and Elena's written permission, Ethan had his attorney draw up a simple affidavit in child-friendly language. Micah printed his name carefully at the bottom, adding a small drawing of a music note. Back in his office, Ethan compiled everything: the blog ownership evidence, the therapy notes, the parent testimonials, and Micah's statement. His attorney confirmed what they'd suspected. Gerald Pickens had been feeding information to Midstate Logistics for months, trying to undermine Ethan's community standing. As the sun began to set, Ethan made one final call: to Pastor Brooks at First Methodist. "We need to hold a town hall," Ethan said. "Tonight if possible. The truth needs to come out, and it needs to come out where everyone can hear it." "I'll make the calls," Pastor Brooks replied without hesitation. 7 o'clock? Ethan picked up his phone one last time, taking a deep breath before dialing Elena's number. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Elena, it's Ethan. I need you to meet me at the church at 7. I know I've let you down, but please, give me this chance to make it right." The silence on the other end felt endless before Elena finally spoke. 7 o'clock, she said quietly, and hung up. The evening sun filtered through the stained glass windows of First Presbyterian, casting warm patches of red and gold across the wooden pews. Elena sat in the back row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching as people filed into the church. The familiar scent of old hymnals and polished oak did little to calm her racing heart. Retta Hayes stood at the front, elegant in her purple choir robe, arranging sheet music with practiced efficiency. Behind her, the choir members, mostly seniors she'd worked with over the past weeks, settled into their places. Several wore small pins with musical notes, tokens from the comfort kits they'd helped assemble. Sadie Caldwell sat in the front pew, wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, while Micah fidgeted beside her. The 2 children had become fast friends despite everything, and now they whispered and giggled together, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room. Pastor Brooks nodded to Elena from near the pulpit, his kind face encouraging. The pews continued filling. She recognized parents from the program, veterans who'd joined the porch concerts, and faces she knew from the laundromat. Some smiled hesitantly, others looked away. Ethan stood at the side door, greeting people as they entered. His usual crisp business attire was replaced by a simple blue sweater that made him look more approachable. Even from across the room, Elena could see the worry lines around his eyes. At precisely 6 o'clock, Retta raised her hands. The choir straightened, and the children gathered at the front, including Micah and Sadie. The gentle notes of the "Brave" song began to fill the sanctuary, the simple melody Micah had composed during their first week at the center. "When I'm scared and all alone," the children's voices rang out clear and true. "I remember I am strong." The seniors joined in harmony, their mature voices adding depth to the children's sweet tones. "Breathe in love and breathe out fear. Friends and family gather near." Elena watched as faces in the congregation softened. Several elderly women dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. A veteran in his wheelchair tapped his fingers in rhythm on the armrest. When the song ended, Ethan walked to the front. He stood for a moment, hands in his pockets, looking out at the gathered community. Then he cleared his throat. "I owe everyone here an apology," he began, his voice quiet but firm. "Especially Elena Porter." He turned to look at her. "When rumors started spreading, I thought staying quiet was the safe choice. I told myself I was protecting Sadie, protecting the program. But sometimes silence only protects lies." He pulled a folder from beneath the pulpit. "This contains proof that the accusations against Elena were fabricated. The blog posts were funded by a competing business, fed by someone with a grudge against our community center." He set the folder down without opening it. "But that's not what matters most. What matters is that I watched a good person, a gifted teacher, face cruel gossip, and I hesitated to stand beside her." Elena felt tears prick at her eyes as Ethan continued. "My late wife believed in building bridges, not walls. She would have been the first to defend Elena. I ask forgiveness for forgetting that lesson." A murmur ran through the congregation. Elena saw several heads nodding, including Gerald Pickens' wife in the middle pew. She hadn't expected to see her there. Retta gestured for Elena to come forward. Her legs felt shaky as she walked down the center aisle, but with each step, she drew strength from the memories of children laughing in the center, of seniors finding new purpose, of Sadie's first calm smile. Standing before the congregation, Elena smoothed her simple dress and took a deep breath. "I could show you my teaching credentials," she began. "I could list my qualifications or defend my integrity. But instead, I want to talk about what happens when we let bias divide us." She looked at the faces before her, faces of neighbors, of people she'd served at the laundromat, of parents whose children had found comfort in their program. When we choose suspicion over trust, we lose more than just relationships. We lose the chance to see God's grace working through each other. Her voice grew stronger. This program wasn't just about helping anxious children. It was about bringing generations together. It was veterans sharing lullabies and widows, finding purpose, and kids learning they're not alone with their fears. That's what bias threatens. Not just one person's reputation, but the threads that weave a community together. Micah beamed at her from his spot near the choir. Sadie reached over and squeezed his hand. I grew up hearing that grace is stronger than gossip. Elena continued. These past weeks tested that belief. But looking at what we built together, seniors and children, rich and poor, all backgrounds and beliefs, I know it's true. The sanctuary was silent for a moment after she finished. Then, in the back row, one of the veterans struggled to his feet, leaning on his cane. He started to applaud. Like a wave, others rose, choir members, parents, even those who had doubted her. The applause grew, filling the vaulted space with a thunder of support. Elena felt the tears spill over as she watched the transformation. Retta stepped forward and hugged her tight, whispering, "That's my girl." Ethan stood nearby, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Sadie darted forward to wrap her arms around Elena's waist, while Micah proudly announced, "That's my mom." Looking out at the standing congregation, Elena saw more than applause. She saw neighbors meeting each other's eyes with new understanding. She saw barriers crumbling and bridges forming. In place of whispers and sidelong glances, there was solidarity. The shift was palpable, like a spring breeze, clearing away winter's last chill. Monday morning arrived with a crisp autumn breeze that rustled the maple trees lining the Arts Center's parking lot. The brick building stood quiet and empty, its windows dark, except for the warm glow coming from the boardroom where 12 people sat around a polished oak table. Elena perched on a straight-back chair near the door, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from trembling. She wore her best navy blazer, the one she'd saved for parent-teacher conferences in her teaching days. Beside her, Retta Hayes sat ramrod straight, projecting calm strength. Ethan Caldwell stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding attention. He'd traded his usual casual business attire for a formal charcoal suit. Before him lay a leather portfolio stuffed with documents. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," he began, his voice steady and clear, "I've called this emergency meeting to present evidence that will conclusively clear Miss Porter's name and expose the true source of the allegations against her." He started laying out papers one by one. First, statements from 23 parents whose children have benefited from the program. Here's one from Sarah Chen, whose daughter hadn't spoken in public for 2 years until joining our music sessions. Board members passed the letters around, murmuring as they read. Martha Whitman, the eldest board member, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Next, medical notes from Dr. Rebecca Torres, Sadie's therapist, documenting the remarkable progress my daughter has made since working with Miss Blanklanks Porter. Ethan's voice softened when he mentioned Sadie. The doctor specifically credits the innovative breathing techniques and music therapy approaches Elena introduced. Elena felt warmth spread through her chest at his use of her first name. It wasn't lost on the board members either. Several exchanged knowing looks. "But, most importantly," Ethan continued, pulling out a child's careful printing on lined paper, "a statement from Micah Porter himself, explaining the innocent misunderstanding that started all this gossip." He read Micah's words aloud. "My mommy was teaching me about what good dads do, like being kind and helping people. When I saw Mr. Caldwell being nice to everyone at the center, I got mixed up and thought that's what mommy meant. I'm sorry I caused trouble. Mr. Caldwell is my friend, not my daddy." The board's secretary, James Morton, cleared his throat. "And what about the alleged screenshot showing Miss Porter requesting money?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I've had my IT team analyze it. It's a crude forgery." He passed around a technical report. The metadata proves it was created 2 weeks ago, using basic photo editing software. But who would do such a thing? Asked Martha Whitman. And why? That brings us to this. Ethan placed a final document on the table, proof that the blog posting these allegations is owned by Vista Media Group, a subsidiary of my biggest competitor in the logistics industry. And their source? He paused, letting tension build. Gerald Pickens. A collective gasp filled the room. The board chairman, Robert Hayes, leaned forward. Gerald? From the school board? The same, Ethan confirmed. He's been feeding them information, twisted to cause maximum damage. His motive appears to be both personal and political. He resented our program, making the school district look bad by comparison. Elena watched the board members' faces shift from shock to anger. These were people who'd known Gerald for years, trusted him with the education of their children and grandchildren. Robert Hayes stood up, his face flushed. I move that we immediately reinstate Ms. Porter and make the pilot program permanent. Furthermore, I suggest we rename it the Grace Caldwell Community Conservatory to honor both its founders. Seconded, Martha Whitman called out, her voice strong despite her age. The vote was unanimous. Elena felt tears welling up as Robert Hayes officially welcomed her back, but she blinked them away. This wasn't the time for crying. Within hours, the news spread through town like wildfire. Gerald Pickens, confronted with the evidence of his actions, submitted his resignation from the school board. The tabloid site, faced with Ethan's lawyers and irrefutable proof of their deception, published a full retraction and apology. Late that afternoon, Elena stood outside the center's front entrance. The autumn sun caught the brass handles of the double doors, making them shine like gold. She reached out and touched one, feeling its solid warmth under her fingers. The nameplate above would soon read, Grace Caldwell Community Conservatory, a permanent testament to truth prevailing over lies, to hope overcoming fear. Through the glass, she could see Retta setting up chairs for tomorrow's first official session. Seniors would fill these halls again with their wisdom and warmth. Children would learn to breathe, to sing, to trust, and she would be there to guide them, finally free of shadows and whispers. The Arts Center buzzed with activity early Wednesday morning as volunteers streamed through the front doors, their arms loaded with instrument cases and colorful canvas bags. Afternoon sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting warm patches on the worn wooden floor where senior volunteers arranged chairs in a wide circle. Retta Hayes directed traffic from the center of the room, her silver hair gleaming as she gestured with the authority of a symphony conductor. Guitar cases along that wall, please. Rhythm instruments on the blue table, and someone help Margaret with those xylophones. 3 retired teachers from the Methodist Church Choir carefully unpacked sets of hand drums, arranging them by size. Mr. Peterson, a Vietnam veteran who'd barely spoken before joining the program, methodically tuned a row of child-sized guitars, his weathered hands moving with gentle precision. At the supply table, Mrs. Chen organized comfort kits with assembly line efficiency, each zippered pouch containing a pocket psalm book, colored pencils, and a laminated Brave Breath instruction card. Her arthritis-curved fingers moved steadily, finding purpose in the familiar task. The first families began arriving just before 10. Children's voices echoed down the hallway, growing louder as they approached. Elena stood near the entrance, her heart swelling as familiar faces appeared. She wore her blue cardigan, the same one Sadie had gripped that day in the mall, like a badge of honor. Miss Elena! 6-year-old Tommy Martinez rushed in, dragging his grandmother by the hand. I practiced my brave song every day, even when you were gone. Me too, called Lucy Chen, her dark pigtails bouncing as she skipped through the door. Parents filtered in behind their children, offering Elena warm smiles and quick hugs. Maria Santos pressed a container of still-warm empanadas into her hands. The kids missed you so much, she whispered. We all did. The room filled quickly with chatter and movement. Seniors helped little ones pick out instruments, while parents found seats along the walls. The energy felt different now, more intimate, more determined. These families had stood together through the controversy, choosing trust over suspicion. At precisely 10 o'clock, Sadie Caldwell walked in, holding her father's hand. Her steps were steady, her chin lifted with newfound confidence. When she spotted Elena, she broke into a run and wrapped her arms around Elena's waist. "Can Micah and I show everyone the new welcome song?" Sadie asked, her voice clear and eager. "We practiced at my house yesterday." Elena glanced at Ethan, who nodded with quiet pride. "They worked on it all afternoon," he said softly. Micah appeared at Elena's side, already wearing his favorite rhythm bells on a ribbon around his neck. His eyes shone with excitement as he took Sadie's hand. Together, they walked to the center of the circle. "Remember to use your pocket breath if you need it," Elena reminded them gently, but both children stood tall, ready to lead. Sadie raised her hand like she'd seen Elena do so many times. The room fell silent, every face turned toward the two small figures in the middle. "First, we all take a brave breath together," she announced. "In for 4 counts," Micah added, demonstrating with his hands rising like a conductor. The entire room breathed in unison, seniors, parents, and children all following the kids' lead. Elena felt tears prick her eyes as she watched Sadie guide the group through the same breathing exercise that had calmed her under the mall bench all those weeks ago. Then Micah shook his bells in a simple pattern. Shake, shake, rest, shake, shake, rest. Other children picked up rhythm sticks and drums, joining in. Sadie's clear voice rose above the percussion. "Welcome, welcome to our brave song space. Welcome, welcome, every heart, every face." The group caught on quickly, voices and instruments building in joyful layers. Even Mr. Peterson was smiling as he strummed his guitar. Parents swayed in their seats, some wiping away tears. During a quiet moment between songs, Ethan touched Elena's elbow. "Can we talk for a minute?" he asked, gesturing toward the hallway. Retta smoothly took over, leading the group in a favorite clapping game. In the relative quiet of the corridor, Ethan's expression was both serious and hopeful. "The mall's east wing has been empty since the department store closed," he said. "I've been talking to the property managers. They're willing to lease us the space at a significant discount." Elena's breath caught. "The whole wing?" 3 stories of possibility. Ethan nodded. "Room for multiple classrooms, performance spaces, maybe even a recording studio for the teens. We could create something permanent. The Grace, Caldwell Community Conservatory." He pulled out his phone, showing her photos of the space. Sunlight streamed through the wing's glass ceiling, illuminating potential. "The loading dock would make instrument delivery easier," he continued. "And there's plenty of parking for families and volunteer shuttles." Elena stared at the images, imagining the empty stores transformed into music rooms, the food court becoming a gathering space for potlucks and performances. Her vision blurred with tears. "Is that a yes?" Ethan asked softly. She could only nod, overcome by the magnitude of what they'd built together. Not just a program, but a community that had proven stronger than prejudice and fear. From the main room came the sound of Sadie's laugh, bright and uninhibited, followed by Micah's voice calling, "Mommy, come see our new dance." Elena wiped her eyes and turned toward the music, Ethan falling into step beside her. In the doorway, they paused to watch their children leading a line dance around the circle. Seniors and parents following their simple steps with delighted determination. The scene before her embodied everything Elena had dreamed of that first day. A place where age and background didn't matter, where healing happened through harmony, where every heart could find its brave song. Through happy tears, she nodded again, knowing with absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The empty mall wing looked different now. Gone were the dusty display windows and faded for lease signs that had marked this space for so long. Instead, the hallway hummed with purpose as volunteers wielded paint rollers and pushed mops across freshly waxed floors. Elena stood in what would become the main practice room, checking items off her clipboard, while 2 seniors from Retta's choir carefully applied sky blue paint to the walls. The transformation over the past month had been remarkable. Where vacant storefronts once stood empty, new spaces were taking shape. Practice rooms, a performance area, and cozy gathering spots filled with comfortable chairs. "Miss Elena," Sadie called out, tugging at her sleeve, "can I help paint the music notes on the wall?" She pointed to where an artist was sketching the outline of a treble clef. "Of course, sweetie. Let's get you an apron first." Elena helped Sadie into a child-sized paint smock, careful not to get any blue spots on the girl's favorite butterfly shirt. Down the hall, veterans from the local VFW post were arranging furniture in their designated lounge. They'd insisted on doing the heavy lifting themselves, positioning overstuffed armchairs and wooden rockers just so. Mr. WWWWWW Jenkins, a retired Marine with silver hair, supervised the placement of a coffee station while sharing stories about lullabies he'd learned in different countries. "The acoustics in here are perfect," Retta declared, testing the sound with a few bars of Amazing Grace, the song that had started it all. Her voice carried beautifully through the space, drawing smiles from everyone within earshot. Ethan appeared with another delivery of supplies, music stands, instrument racks, and colorful storage bins. He caught Elena's eye and nodded appreciatively at the progress. The space was becoming exactly what they'd envisioned: warm, welcoming, and alive with possibility. A team of high school art students worked on the murals under their teacher's guidance. One wall featured a parade of joyful musicians of all ages and abilities. Another showed a sunset scene of people gathering on front porches, instruments in hand, a reminder of those healing evening concerts. Micah darted between the workers, helping wherever he could. He'd appointed himself official water bearer, making sure everyone stayed hydrated. The seniors doted on him, accepting his paper cups with exaggerated gratitude that made him beam with pride. In the former shoe store, now transformed into the instrument library, volunteers cataloged donations. Gently used guitars lined one wall, while percussion instruments filled custom-built shelves. A piano tuner worked his way through a row of donated keyboards, each gentle ping and adjustment adding to the symphony of activity. "The sheet music arrived," called out Mrs. Rodriguez, one of the retired music teachers. She directed a chain of helpers unloading boxes of beginner pieces, teaching materials, and songbooks. The collection would ensure that every student, regardless of means, would have access to quality music education. Near the entrance, a professional sign painter carefully traced letters in elegant gold script: Grace, Caldwell Community Conservatory. Each stroke seemed to make it more real, more permanent. The name itself was a testament to healing, joining Elena's middle name with Sadie's surname in a symbol of unity that transcended the gossip that had once threatened to tear them apart. The Veterans Lounge took special shape under Mr. Jenkins's watchful eye. Photos of service members with their instruments began to fill one wall: a guitar player in desert fatigues, a chaplain with his portable keyboard, a group singing around a makeshift fire. These images would remind visitors that music had always been a source of comfort and connection, even in the hardest times. Sadie worked diligently on her section of the mural, carefully filling in musical notes with metallic gold paint. Her hand was steady now, her breathing calm and regulated, such a change from the frightened child who'd huddled under a bench just months ago. She hummed while she worked, occasionally joining in when Retta started another song. The transformation wasn't just in the physical space. Elena saw it in the faces around her: seniors who'd found new purpose, children who'd discovered their voices, veterans who'd created a place to share their stories. The empty mall wing had become a sanctuary of sound and solidarity. As the afternoon light began to fade, most volunteers packed up for the day. Elena stayed behind, walking the length of the hallway one more time. Her fingers trailed along the fresh paint of the sign, feeling each letter of Grace Caldwell. The name represented so much more than just a music program. It was a testament to second chances, to community healing, to the power of choosing hope over fear. Standing there in the quiet, Elena closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks. The words came easily, flowing from a heart full of gratitude for this unexpected gift, not just the space itself, but the healing it represented. Sunlight streamed through the newly cleaned windows of the Grace Caldwell Community Conservatory, casting warm rectangles across the polished floor. The once empty mall wing buzzed with excitement as families filed through the double doors, their voices echoing off the freshly painted walls. Children wore rainbow t-shirts with musical notes, while seniors sported matching blue vests with silver treble clef pins. Elena smoothed her navy dress and took a deep breath. The space she'd dreamed about had finally come to life. Where empty stores once gathered dust, music rooms now waited with tuned pianos and organized shelves of instruments. The drab mall corridor had transformed into a cheerful haven, with murals of dancing notes and floating butterflies adorning the walls. "Ready for the first number?" Retta asked, adjusting her choir robe. She held up her conductor's baton with a wink. "As ready as we'll ever be," Elena replied, watching reporters set up their cameras near the ribbon-cutting area. The opening ceremony began with what they called the Grand Kazoo Parade. Micah led the line of children, each holding a brightly colored kazoo. They marched through the hallway, humming "When the Saints Go Marching In," while seniors clapped in time. The simple joy of the moment brought tears to many eyes. Here were kids who once struggled to enter crowded spaces, now proudly leading a parade. Next came the wheelchair waltz, an idea born from Mr. Jenkins, who'd noticed how some elderly veterans felt left out of standing activities. Partners took turns, one sitting, one standing, as they moved to gentle, classical music. The sight of young children carefully pushing wheelchairs while giggling with their senior partners made even the most stoic reporters smile. In the Veterans Lounge, now dubbed the Lullaby Corner, former service members shared songs they'd learned across the world. Mr. Jenkins sat in his favorite rocker, teaching a group of fascinated children a Vietnamese lullaby he'd learned decades ago. The gentle melody floated down the hallway, mixing with other music in an unexpected harmony. "Remember to breathe, like a balloon," Sadie's voice carried from the calm room, where she sat cross-legged with 3 nervous newcomers. "Put your hand on your tummy, like this." She demonstrated the pocket breath technique Elena had taught her that first day in the mall. In for 4 counts, out for 6. It's like blowing bubbles really slowly. Elena paused in the doorway, watching as Sadie counted breaths with confidence. The shy girl who once hid under benches now helped others find their calm. One of the new children, a boy with glasses too big for his face, closed his eyes and followed Sadie's instructions. His shoulders relaxed visibly with each exhale. The music program coordinator from the elementary school, Gerald's replacement, stopped to shake Elena's hand. "This is remarkable," she said, gesturing to where Micah was teaching rhythm patterns to a group of seniors. "Would you consider a partnership with our after-school program?" Before Elena could answer, a sweet sound drew everyone's attention. In the main practice room, Retta had assembled the intergenerational choir. They began with the brave song Micah had composed, but now arranged for multiple voices. Children's bright tones blended with rich adult harmonies, the melody stronger for its diversity. Parents gathered in the hallway, many wiping eyes as they watched their once anxious children perform with confidence. A mother, Elena, recognized from the housing projects, hugged her daughter's violin case, beaming. Next to her, the bank president's wife nodded along, their differences forgotten in the music. The afternoon continued with rotating activities. In one room, a drum circle helped kids learn patterns and patience. In another, gentle movement classes taught coordination through simple dance steps. The art therapy corner filled with drawings as children illustrated how different songs made them feel. Near the front desk, a display of photos showed the conservatory's journey from empty storefronts to vibrant classrooms. Elena paused there, remembering the doubt and fear that had nearly derailed everything. But there was no trace of that darkness now. Instead, the spaces overflowed with light and song. Looking over the crowd, Elena noticed something that made her heart swell. The boundaries that once divided their town seemed to have melted away. The mayor's grandson shared crayons with a boy from the trailer park. A retired banker taught guitar chords to a single mom's daughter. Teenagers who usually spent afternoons glued to phones now helped elderly participants navigate the hallways. "Watch this, Miss Elena," called out one of her regular students. The girl, who used to panic at the thought of performing, now stood confidently at the piano. She played a simple tune she'd learned, her small fingers sure on the keys. As the afternoon light began to soften, Elena made her way through the rooms, checking that everything ran smoothly. She adjusted a crooked music stand, straightened a row of chairs, and smiled at how naturally everyone moved through the space, as if it had always been there. In the main hallway, a spontaneous line dance had broken out. Seniors taught children the steps, while parents recorded on their phones. The joy was contagious, spreading from person to person like a healing wave. Pausing by the new drinking fountain, Elena felt a familiar presence. She turned to find Ethan standing near the Grace Caldwell Community Conservatory sign, his eyes bright with quiet pride as he watched her. In that moment, she saw what he saw. Not just a music program or a community center, but a place where grace truly was louder than gossip. The evening sun cast long shadows through the conservatory's west-facing windows, painting the community room in warm amber tones. Elena arranged the last of the folding tables into a horseshoe shape, making sure there was plenty of space for wheelchairs between them. The smell of home-cooked dishes already filled the air, someone's lasagna, fresh rolls, and what she was pretty sure was Mrs. Martinez's famous tres leches cake. "Mommy, can I put the napkins out?" Micah asked, bouncing on his toes near a box of supplies. He wore his favorite blue button-down shirt, the one with tiny piano keys on the collar. "Sure, sweetie, just remember. One at each place, folded like a triangle," he finished, already carefully counting as he moved around the tables. The first Family Friday potluck was Elena's idea, a way to bring everyone together without name tags or titles or fancy clothes. Just neighbors sharing food and music, the way community should be. Ethan emerged from the storage room, carrying a stack of chairs. "Where do you want these?" he asked, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "Over by the window wall," Elena directed. "The seniors like to watch the sunset while they eat." As if on cue, Mr. Jenkins wheeled himself through the door, his Vietnam veteran cap proudly displayed and a covered dish balanced on his lap. "I brought my wife's old potato salad recipe," he announced. "Took me 3 tries to get it right, but I think she'd be proud." More guests arrived in steady streams. Mrs. Chen from the senior apartments brought dumplings. The Martinez family carried in 3 different casseroles. Pastor Brooks arrived with his famous sweet tea, and Retta swept in with a gospel choir's worth of desserts. Sadie darted between the tables, showing off her new calm corner to other kids. "And here's where we keep the breathing buddies," she explained to a younger girl, demonstrating how to use the soft stuffed animals that rose and fell with each breath. Her confidence had grown so much in the past months. The veterans gathered near the window, sharing stories that somehow seemed lighter here than they might have elsewhere. Mr. Jenkins described teaching lullabies to children in a Vietnamese village. Mr. Rodriguez talked about the harmonica that got him through lonely nights in Desert Storm. "My squad called me the music man," he chuckled, pulling out that same harmonica. "Still carry it everywhere." A spontaneous music circle formed in one corner. 3 kids with rhythm sticks, a grandmother with a tambourine, and Mr. Rodriguez on his harmonica played an improvised version of "You Are My Sunshine." Other voices joined in, some carrying the melody, others adding harmony parts they remembered from choir. Elena moved through the room, making sure everyone had enough to eat, pausing to help cut meat for arthritic hands or open stubborn juice boxes for little ones. She caught Ethan's eye across the room several times, sharing small smiles at particularly touching moments, like when Micah taught a younger child, the brave song hand motions, or when Sadie helped an elderly woman find the perfect piece of cake. "This is what I imagined," Ethan said quietly, appearing at her elbow as she refilled the lemonade. "But better." "Because it's real," Elena replied, watching as one of her former laundromat customers shared a recipe with a bank executive, all previous social barriers forgotten over homemade mac and cheese. The evening mellowed into comfortable conversation and impromptu music lessons. Mr. Jenkins showed a fascinated group of kids how to play Heart and Soul on the upright piano. Retta taught a young mother the harmony part to Amazing Grace, the same song that had first calmed Sadie in the mall all those months ago. As the sun dipped lower, families began gathering their empty dishes and sleepy children. The seniors helped stack chairs, refusing to leave all the work to you young folks. Micah and Sadie made one last circuit of the room, collecting forgotten napkins and stray plastic cups. "Best potato salad I've had since my mother's," Pastor Brooks told Mr. Jenkins, who beamed with pride. "Next time I'll bring her chocolate cake recipe," the veteran promised, "if I can figure out her handwriting." Elena watched the last stragglers say their goodbyes, exchanging phone numbers and promises to share recipes. The room still hummed with leftover warmth and fellowship, even as the crowd thinned. "Let me get those," Ethan said, taking a stack of serving spoons from her hands and adding them to the dishwasher. "You've done enough tonight." "We all did," she corrected him, smiling at Micah, who was carefully pushing chairs under tables. "That's what makes it work." The final dishes were cleared, the last crumbs swept away, and the borrowed coffee urns cleaned. Elena gathered her purse and Micah's backpack, feeling pleasantly tired but content. "Mind if we walk you home?" Ethan asked, holding the door as Sadie helped Micah into his light jacket. "It's a beautiful night." The late afternoon light streamed through the conservatory's tall windows, casting a warm glow across the polished wooden floors. Elena adjusted Micah's blue bow tie for the third time, her fingers trembling slightly more than his. "Is it time yet?" Micah whispered, peeking around the corner at the growing crowd in the main room. His sheet music, carefully marked with colorful tabs, was clutched tightly in his small hands. "Almost, sweetheart." Elena smoothed his collar, fighting the urge to adjust the tie again. "Remember what we practiced about breathing?" Micah demonstrated, his chest rising as he took a deep pocket breath, the same technique she'd taught Sadie that day in the mall. "In for 4, out for 6, he recited, his voice steadier than it had been all afternoon. The main room had transformed for the evening. Rows of chairs formed neat semicircles around the upright piano, which gleamed under the spotlight. Senior volunteers from Retta's choir had decorated the walls with paper musical notes and encouraging messages. Near the front row, Mr. Pausens Jenkins, a retired music teacher, gave Micah a thumbs up as he settled into his wheelchair. Elena spotted Sadie in the front row, wearing a pale pink dress with a matching ribbon in her hair. The little girl had insisted on making a hand-drawn program for everyone, complete with crayon illustrations of musical instruments. Now she was carefully distributing them, explaining to each person exactly which picture she'd drawn for which song. 5 minutes, Retta called softly, appearing beside them in the hallway. She wore her Sunday best, a purple dress with a silver brooch shaped like a treble clef. "How's our star pianist?" Micah's fingers drummed against his leg, playing invisible keys. "I practiced the ending part extra," he said, "the hard part where both hands have to do different things." "That's my boy," Retta winked at him. "And don't forget, we're all family here, just like Family Fridays, but with fancier clothes." Elena watched as more people filtered in. Parents from the program, veterans who'd become regular volunteers, even a few faces she recognized from the laundromat. Gina had closed early to attend, bringing her whole family. The room hummed with quiet conversation and occasional laughter. Ethan appeared at the doorway, Sadie having finished her program distribution and returned to his side. He wore a charcoal gray suit that managed to look both formal and comfortable. "Everything okay back here?" he asked, his voice gentle. Micah nodded, then shook his head, then nodded again. "My tummy feels funny." "That's just the butterflies getting ready to help you fly," Ethan said, kneeling to meet Micah's eyes. "When I gave my first business presentation, I had so many butterflies I thought I might take off." This drew a giggle from Micah. "That's silly." "But true," Ethan assured him. "Want to know a secret? Sadie helped me practice my speech for the board meeting last week. She was a tough audience, made me start over if I talked too fast." Sadie beamed with pride. I used the timer on Daddy's phone and everything." The clock struck 6, and Retta gestured that it was time. Elena gave Micah one final hug, breathing in the scent of his freshly washed hair. "Remember what we always say?" "The music's already in me," Micah whispered back. "I just have to let it out." Retta stepped into the main room to introduce him. "Ladies and gentlemen, for our first student recital at the Grace Caldwell Community Conservatory, please welcome Micah Porter, performing an original composition." Micah walked to the piano with careful steps, his sheet music held like a shield against his chest. The wooden bench creaked slightly as he adjusted it, just as they'd practiced. Elena held her breath as he settled his fingers over the keys. For a moment, complete stillness filled the room. Then, soft and clear, the first notes of the Brave song floated into the air. The melody was simple but sweet, born from the tune Micah had hummed while making comfort kits all those weeks ago. Elena watched his small hands move with growing confidence, remembering how he'd worked out the pattern using paper keys before ever touching the piano. In the audience, someone began to hum along. "Sadie," Elena realized with a start. The humming spread gently through the room as others joined in, creating a soft harmony beneath Micah's playing. Even Mr. Jenkins closed his eyes and swayed slightly in his wheelchair, a peaceful smile on his weathered face. When Micah reached the challenging final section, his hands separated into their different rhythms just as he'd practiced. The left playing steady quarter notes like a heartbeat, the right weaving a hopeful melody above it. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes, recognizing in the music everything they'd been through. The fear, the courage, the healing. The final notes hung in the air like a blessing. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Sadie leapt to her feet, applauding with such enthusiasm that her pink ribbon nearly came loose. The room erupted in cheers and clapping, Mr. Jenkins' deep "Bravo!" carrying over the noise. Micah stood and gave a slightly wobbly bow, his face flushed with accomplishment and joy. He practically floated back to where Elena waited in the hallway, throwing himself into her arms. "You did it, baby," she whispered, holding him tight. "You were wonderful. Did you see? Did you see? I didn't mess up the hard part?" His words tumbled out in excited bursts. "I saw everything." Elena wiped her eyes, laughing a little at her own tears. "I'm so proud of you." People began filing out toward the reception area, where punch and cookies waited. Micah spotted Sadie waving and darted off to join her, his earlier nervousness completely forgotten. Elena watched them head toward the snack table, already deep in conversation about what looked like Sadie's plans for her own future recital. "Your son's got courage," Ethan said quietly, coming to stand beside her. Elena smiled, her heart full as she watched Micah carefully pour a cup of punch for his friend. "He gets it from this place." The moon hung like a silver pendant over the conservatory as the last echoes of applause faded into evening quiet. Elena sat on the front steps, her navy dress smooth beneath her, watching the parking lot empty. The spring air carried the lingering sweetness of the punch and cookies from the reception mixed with the crisp scent of newly mowed grass. Ethan emerged from inside, his suit jacket draped over one arm, carrying 2 paper cups of lukewarm coffee. He offered one to Elena before settling beside her on the steps, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Micah was remarkable tonight," he said, his voice soft in the gathering dusk. "The way he helped that younger student who froze during her piece, getting her to breathe and start again, he's got a natural gift for it." Elena wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, grateful for its warmth. "He learned that from watching you with Sadie. The gentleness, the patience." She paused, studying the ripples in her coffee. "I never thought we'd be here, you know. 6 months ago I was folding other people's laundry, trying to figure out how to keep Micah's spirit from dimming. And I was watching Sadie withdraw more every day," Ethan added, loosening his tie. "Wondering if I'd ever see her truly smile again after Sarah." His voice caught on his late wife's name, but he pressed on. "After we lost her." The streetlights flickered on, one by one, casting pools of yellow light across the parking lot. A cool breeze rustled the young maple trees lining the walkway. Tell me about her? Elena asked gently. Sarah, Sadie has her smile in that photo in your living room. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and Elena worried she'd overstepped. But then he spoke, his voice warm with memory. She was a middle school art teacher. Used to say every child was a masterpiece in progress. When she got sick, she made me promise to keep Sadie surrounded by beauty and creativity. He ran a hand through his hair. I tried, but I got lost in the logistics of everything. Doctor's appointments, work, school. I forgot about the joy. Until what? Until I heard you humming Amazing Grace in that empty mall. Watching you with Sadie, it was like Sarah's promise came back to life. Elena felt her cheeks warm. She set her coffee cup down on the step beside her. The program has healed so many people. The seniors finding purpose again, the veterans sharing their stories, the kids learning to breathe through their fears. It's healed me too, Ethan admitted quietly. Watching you build this place from nothing but hope and determination, it reminded me there's always a path forward, even when it seems impossible. A car door slammed in the distance, and a night bird called from the trees. Elena felt the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Elena. Ethan turned slightly toward her, his expression earnest in the lamplight. I need to tell you something, and I want to do it right. These past months, working with you, seeing your strength and your heart. He took a deep breath. I've been thinking about you as more than just a colleague or friend. Elena's heart stuttered, but she kept her voice steady. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it too. She smoothed her skirt, choosing her words carefully. But Ethan, we have to think about Sadie and Micah. They've both been through so much change already. You're right, he agreed. The last thing I want is to rush into something that could unsettle them. Sadie's just starting to feel secure again, and Micah. Micah's finally found his place here, Elena finished. His confidence is blooming. I can't risk anything disrupting that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. So we take it slow, Ethan said finally. Day by day. The kids come first, always. And the program, Elena added. What we've built here is too important to complicate with personal matters. Ethan nodded, standing up and offering his hand to help Elena to her feet. Then, let's make it official, a promise to be patient, to let whatever this is between us grow at its own pace. Elena took his offered hand, noting how naturally their fingers fit together. They shook once, formally, but neither let go immediately. Like a good piece of music, Elena said, smiling. It needs the right tempo to work properly. Exactly. Ethan released her hand slowly, no rushing the rhythm. They stood for a moment in the soft evening light, the conservatory's new sign gleaming above them, a symbol of second chances and unexpected grace. The spring sunlight streamed through the conservatory's freshly cleaned windows, casting warm rectangles across the polished wooden floors. Elena stood in the doorway of the main performance space, taking in the Saturday morning bustle. The room hummed with life, seniors adjusting their sheet music, children practicing rhythm patterns, and parents chatting over cups of steaming coffee from the new community kitchen. Retta's voice carried from the choir room, where she was directing a group of veterans in perfecting their harmonies for the lullaby album. Remember, gentlemen, these songs need to soothe little ones to sleep. Let's try Moon River one more time, but softer. Elena walked past the practice rooms, each one telling its own story. In the first, Mrs. Davidson, a retired piano teacher, guided tiny fingers across black and white keys. Next door, Mr. Thompson, who once thought his arthritis would keep him from music forever, tapped out simple rhythms with a group of giggling toddlers. The art wall displayed new drawings, children's interpretations of their favorite songs. Elena paused at Micah's latest contribution. Stick figures holding hands in a circle, musical notes floating above their heads like colorful butterflies. Beneath it, in his careful 7-year-old handwriting, he'd written, "Our brave song family." "Miss Elena!" Sadie's voice pulled her attention to the calm corner, where the little girl was showing a newcomer how to do pocket breaths. "Look, Tommy learned it on his first try." Elena smiled, watching Sadie demonstrate the counting. "In for 4, out for 6, she explained patiently, just as Elena had taught her that day in the mall. The transformation in Sadie still amazed her, from the trembling child under the bench to this confident young teacher. Through the open windows came the distant strains of music from Cedar Street, where the porch concerts had taken root. What started as a single afternoon of songs had bloomed into a regular tradition. Every Saturday, different neighborhoods filled their streets with music. Today, it was the East Side's turn, and Elena could just make out the warm brass notes of Mr. Garcia's trumpet floating on the breeze. In the senior lounge, Elena found a group of volunteers sorting through old photographs for the conservatory's upcoming first anniversary celebration. They'd been collecting images from the early days, the Comfort Kits assembly line, the first open house, the renovation of the mall wing. "Remember this one?" Mrs. Brooks held up a snapshot of the veterans' first lullaby hour. "Who would have thought these tough old soldiers had such gentle voices?" The afternoon sun shifted, painting the walls in shades of gold. Elena checked in on the recording session, where the seniors were laying down tracks for their album. The project had started as a simple idea, recording their most requested lullabies for families to play at home, but had grown into something bigger. Local radio stations had already asked to feature it. "We're calling it Twilight Tunes," Retta announced proudly, adjusting her headphones. "These songs have traveled with us through wars and peace, across oceans and generations. Now, they'll help a new batch of little ones find their way to dreamland." In the craft room, a cluster of children worked on decorating CD covers for the album, their tongues sticking out in concentration as they drew stars and moons. Micah sat among them, carefully lettering song titles in his best handwriting. The afternoon mellowed into evening. Parents began gathering their children, but not before stopping to sign up for next week's activities. The sign-up sheets were always full now, a far cry from the uncertain early days when Elena had worried if anyone would come at all. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows through the windows, the last few seniors packed up their instruments. The veterans gathered their sheet music, discussing next week's rehearsal between friendly debates about baseball scores. Mrs. Davidson lingered at the piano, playing a soft melody that seemed to embrace the peace of the moment. Elena walked through each room, straightening chairs and collecting forgotten sweaters. In the calm corner, a new batch of Comfort Kits waited for Monday's anxiety support group. The rhythm sticks were neatly arranged by size, and the pocket psalms were stacked in rainbow order, Sadie's careful work before she left. Through the windows, she could see the porch music was still going strong in the distance. The melody of Amazing Grace drifted in, the same song she'd hummed to Sadie all those months ago. Now it was being carried on dozens of voices, floating through the neighborhoods like a blessing. Micah helped her check the locks on the practice rooms, his sneakers squeaking on the clean floors. "Mom," he said, pausing by the art wall, "can we walk home past Cedar Street? I want to hear the music." "Sure, sweetheart." Elena smiled, thinking how natural it felt now, this weaving of music through their daily lives. At the main entrance, she took one last look around the space that had become so much more than just a community center. It was a place of healing, of second chances, of bridges built between generations and across divides. The last rays of sunlight caught the letters above the door. Grace, Caldwell Community Conservatory, making them shine like gold. Elena turned the key in the lock, listening to the distant harmonies floating on the evening air. The porch music would play until sunset, a gentle reminder of how far they'd all come together. She took Micah's hand, and as they stepped into the gathering dusk, she whispered words that had become both a memory and a promise. "Grace is louder than gossip." They walked toward home, following the trail of music that threaded through the streets like a silver ribbon of hope. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Elena Grace Porter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.